Luis' house is ours now. Get out. After Luis, my father-in-law, passed away, my husband Dennis started claiming my childhood home for himself and his parents, saying things out of turn. Don't you guys know? Hearing Dennis' shallow words made me go beyond dismay to laughter. My retaliation against Dennis, who had looked down on me, sent his family to rock bottom. I am Madonna. I lived with my husband Dennis and my father Luis. My mother passed away when I was in high school, and afterward, my father raised me with a lot of love. I love my father dearly. When my father became elderly, over 70, and I was worried about him, Dennis readily agreed to live together in my childhood home. Are you sure this is okay? I can manage on my own, you know. My father worriedly said to me. What he was talking about was living together with me and Dennis. Recently, when I suggested to my father that I wanted to live together, he initially looked happy but then became concerned quickly. I appreciate it, but won't I be a burden on your and Dennis' life? My father always worried about me first. However, when I told him that I wanted to be with him and that Dennis had agreed, my father smiled and happily agreed. And today is the moving day for me and Dennis. We are unpacking the boxes that the movers brought in. Come on. You're saying it again. I told you before that's what I wanted, right? Yes, Luis. Plus, it's closer to work from here, and it helps me out too. My father smiled a little and said, I see, when Dennis and I told him this. After unpacking for a while, we went to the living room, where my father had made us warm coffee. I was about to have coffee when I heard someone coming down the stairs. I thought you might be taking a break, so I prepared some for you and Dennis as well. Tired, Dennis and I gratefully accepted and took a break, chatting with my father. Watching us, I felt our future life would be more enjoyable than before, which made me happy. After resting for a while, Dennis and I went back to our room to continue unpacking. Rolling up our sleeves, we motivated ourselves to push a little further. Hey, you can quit your job if you want. Stay by Luis' side. While working, Dennis made an unexpected suggestion. I stopped, surprised. What? What do you mean? Because, by living here, we've reduced the rent we used to pay. So, you could quit your job and take care of Luis, talk to him. It'd give you peace of mind, right? Currently, Dennis and I both work, and I handle the household chores. Dennis helps with the chores occasionally, but it's been quite busy nonetheless. I was a bit troubled by Dennis' suggestion and told him I'd think about it. Indeed, having more time to be with my father was appealing. And the thought of being able to focus on household chores seemed to lessen my burden. Dennis' proposal was attractive, but it meant relying on his income, which worried me about becoming a burden on him. Dennis had already agreed to the cohabitation. Could I rely on him even more? With our living situation changing from today, I decided to keep living as we had been for the time being. Dennis told me not to push myself, but the cohabitation was my suggestion. I felt I couldn't always depend on Dennis. A month passed. Hey, maybe you should quit your job for Luis' sake after all? When Dennis suggested this again, I was already considering it might be better. Living together had actually lessened my burden, not increased it. Because my father was helping with the household chores. Thinking of preparing dinner on my way home, I'd find my father had already cooked or cleaned, which seemed to increase his burden instead. Feeling guilty about this situation, I had been contemplating quitting my job. Yeah. Maybe I will. I'm sorry to put the financial burden on you, Dennis. What are you talking about? Don't worry about it. With that, I decided to quit my job. When I told my father, he said he'd take care of the household chores and that I should not worry about working, but when I insisted that I wanted to do the chores, he thought for a moment and then agreed. Since quitting my job, I've been able to focus on household duties. Spending more time with my father has enriched our days. However, things gradually began to change. Welcome back. You must be tired today. Is dinner ready? Dennis started coming home late, and with my father already asleep by the time he returned, the three of us had fewer meals together. Today, I was watching TV with Dad and... Can you be quiet while eating? Oh, sorry. Dennis is as kind as ever when my father is around, but lately, he's become very cold when it's just the two of us. Thinking I might be burdening him since I quit my job, all I can do is apologize. After finishing his meal, Dennis gets up to prepare his usual after-dinner drink, then suddenly decides to leave the dining room. Where are you going? What about your drink? Shower. He says curtly and leaves, closing the door roughly behind him. Not knowing if he's just in a bad mood or tired, these days have been so continuous that I can't help but sigh. The next day, as usual, I wait for Dennis to come home after my father has gone to bed, but he doesn't return even after midnight. Worried, I try calling him, but he doesn't answer his phone. Just as I'm getting really concerned, a message arrives. What? Even the text feels cold. I sigh again, relieved that he's at least safe. Still at work? I was worried because it's so late. He responds quickly. On a business trip. The reply is short. But from this, I understand he won't be coming home today. I hadn't heard anything about a business trip and think he should have told me earlier, but I also worry that mentioning it might upset him more. So, you're on a business trip. Got it. When will you be back? I send this, but get no reply. After that, Dennis's business trips seem to increase, without him telling me when he'd be leaving or when he'd return. My father worries too, and when Dennis is home, asks him if everything is okay. I'm totally fine. Just working hard for the family. Dennis responds with a bright smile he no longer shows me. Seeing this, I wonder if he's upset with me. I try to talk about it, but he dismisses it, saying he's just busy or tired, and we never really have a proper discussion. Eventually, Dennis hardly comes home at all. Suspicious, I start to wonder if he's having an affair when suddenly, I receive a message from Dennis's mother, Cecile, after a long time. Give me Dennis's company address. The message is blunt, without any greeting. Since the beginning of our marriage, my in-laws haven't liked me, often making snide remarks or harassing me, so over time, I've distanced myself from them, although Dennis understood and it never affected our relationship. But we never attempted to mend things, so the relationship remained distant. Puzzled by Cecile's abrupt message, I reply. It's been a while. May I ask why you need Dennis's company address? This seems to upset her, as she calls me, angry. Hello. It's been a while. It's not been a while. You've had Dennis looking after your father and quit your job to do no housework at all. What's this about? Because of you, Dennis has been staying at our house. He forgot something today and was going to drop it off at his company. And you're acting like this. Unbelievable. Give me the address now. Also, from now on, Dennis will be living with us. Stunned by Cecile's barrage, I learned Dennis had been going back to his parents' house on the days he said he was on business trips. Shocked that he had told his parents such things, I feel betrayed. Despite him saying it was okay for me to quit my job and to stay by my father's side, realizing Dennis's true feelings was heartbreaking. Unable to argue, I give Cecile Dennis's company address and hang up. Trying to calm down, I'm making coffee in the living room when my father comes in. Smiling as usual, I ask him, "Want some coffee?" He looks at me closely, smiles, and says, "I might just take you up on that." As we sit drinking coffee together, my father starts to talk. "When your mom and I were younger, we used to argue a lot. Misunderstandings, miscommunications, but we always resolved them by talking honestly. Maybe couples who can argue and fix their relationship are better off, understanding each other more deeply and getting along better." Listening to my father, it feels like he sees right through me. His words resonate with me, and I decide to have a proper talk with Dennis. "Yeah. Thanks, Dad." When I told my father, he laughed. Then, after receiving a message from Cecile, I sent Dennis a message saying I wanted to talk. However, Dennis replied that it was too much trouble, making me sigh. Who's making it troublesome? Anger towards Dennis started to bubble up. I wanted to reply impulsively, but I took a deep breath to remain calm. Maybe that triggered it, but Dennis stopped giving me money for living expenses. He wouldn't answer my calls anymore, and my messages about the living expenses were ignored too. His selfish actions were making my love for him fade. Was there any point in staying married? The thought of divorce crossed my mind. I was disillusioned with Dennis for being so irresponsible and selfish. But not wanting to worry my father further, I put the thought of divorce on hold and decided to use my savings from before I was married to get by. I had gotten used to life without Dennis, enjoying my days with my father. Then one day, my father collapsed. He was rushed to the hospital, where I was told he didn't have long left. I broke down crying there, unable to comprehend the doctors' and nurses' words. When I went to my father's room, he was conscious, forcing a smile and apologizing for worrying me. I took his hand, trying my best to smile back despite my swollen eyes. "What kind of face is that?" My father laughed, looking sad, making me feel like crying again. Since my father would be hospitalized, I went home to prepare some changes of clothes. Alone at home, I started crying again. The house I grew up in, filled with too many memories, felt unbearable to be in alone. While I was crying, my phone rang. Thinking it was the hospital, I checked to find a message from Dennis. "We live separately now. Take care of your own living expenses. Why don't you use your father's pension?" The moment I read it, I threw my phone in anger. That was the moment my feelings for Dennis completely vanished. Shaking with anger and sorrow, I tried to calm down, wondering what my father would think of me now. Somewhat calmer, I washed my face and finished preparing to go back to the hospital. Just then, the mail arrived with news that seemed like a blessing to me at that moment. After seeing it, I firmed up my resolve, left the documents at home, and headed to the hospital. My father's condition worsened, and I realized our goodbye was near. I spent my days at the hospital laughing and talking with my father, and crying when I returned home. Eventually, my father passed away peacefully. I was able to watch his final moments as if he was sleeping peacefully. I was devastated but also grateful for everything he had left me. With my relatives' support, we managed to hold the funeral without issue, but Dennis and his parents never showed up. I hadn't informed them of my father's death, so I had no expectations. However, Dennis showed up days after finishing my father's posthumous affairs, nonchalantly with a lot of baggage. Long time no see. Luis passed away? Seeing Dennis, I felt a rush of anger, but managed to keep my composure. What do you want? What's with the baggage? No way to greet, huh? Isn't it obvious? Your husband is back. Also, this is my parents' stuff. Excuse me? Hearing the word husband from Dennis was extremely unpleasant. I couldn't believe someone who had left on his own, stopped contributing to our living expenses, and lived as he pleased dared to refer to himself as my husband. You were waiting for me, right? No job, struggling with living expenses, and having to take care of your father alone. Speechless with joy? Or rather, you fell for my plan. Dennis mentioned a plan that caught my attention, and I asked what he meant. The unbelievable response came back. Luis moving in? I hated that idea. Living with Luis? You must be joking. But if I said that, you might consider divorce. And if we divorced, I wouldn't get this house. So, I moved in with the act of a loving husband, made you jobless, to ensure you and Luis would depend on me. That way, this house would become mine. Hearing this, I found myself glaring at Dennis unconsciously. This is not something a normal person would think of. The shame of having married such a person, and the overwhelming guilt towards my father made me tremble with frustration. You say that yet you leave and stop providing for us. Isn't that contradictory? At that, Dennis began scratching his head, looking annoyed. Yeah, I reached my limit of patience. I never thought I'd be such a short-tempered man. But I thought you wouldn't have the courage to divorce, so my plan would still succeed even without me. His smirk made me wonder what I ever saw in him. I don't want to see his face or hear his voice anymore. Dennis had become physically repulsive to me. And so, my plan succeeded. This house might be old, but it's spacious and in a good location. It'll be worth a lot when sold. From today, I'll live here with my parents. It's rare to find someone so selfish. He must have never learned about morality. Well, considering his parents, it's not surprising. As I stood there in silent disbelief, Dennis, thinking I was shocked, added insult to injury. I'll take Luis's house. Get out. Watching the in-laws' belongings being moved in, I realized Dennis had no grasp of our situation. Dennis looked down on me with disdain. After his appalling comments about my father, I couldn't let this go. I found myself unable to hold back laughter at Dennis's ridiculous statements. Surprised by my sudden laughter, Dennis looked puzzled. Have you lost your mind? That's my line. The thought of confronting him with reality made me laugh uncontrollably. As Dennis began to rage, I ignored him and stated the facts. Do you guys not know? This is my house. It will never be yours. My words left Dennis frozen, and I went for the kill. Besides, you and I are strangers now. Haven't you heard from Cecile? Laughing, I watched as Dennis was left speechless, and then began to make a call. It seemed he was calling Cecile. Mom? Madonna's saying something nonsensical. We're not divorced, right? She said you should know. What's that about? What? You sent it? What have you done? Listening to Dennis, it seemed he was beginning to grasp the situation. Dennis ended the call with a twisted face. You filed for divorce? Yes. Exactly. The day your father was hospitalized. Cecile sent the completed divorce papers by mail, and I was so happy I sent them back the next day. Cecile did something nice. Darn. Even if it arrived, you shouldn't have sent it. Mom said to write it just in case. I never intended to divorce. Well, you filled it out, didn't you? I don't know about your intentions. I just granted your wish for divorce. You should be thanking me. Seeing Dennis so frustrated was satisfying. Cecile must have sent it to harass me, but to me, contemplating divorce that day, the arrival of the divorce papers was great news. Afterward, Dennis, panicking about property division and claiming rights to the house because he moved in with my father, was easily rebutted. Knowing there wasn't much to divide since the property wasn't valuable and was in my father's name at the time of the divorce, I explained it wasn't subject to division. When Dennis desperately claimed my personal savings from before our marriage should be divided, I clarified that too was not subject to division. Dennis turned pale, unable to respond, his mouth moving like a goldfish. I was tempted to mock him further, but I composed myself for a more mature response. Can we stop this now? Bringing so much stuff into someone else's house is troublesome, and frankly, it's trespassing. If you plan to stay any longer, I'll have to call the police. When I said that, Dennis hurriedly started moving his things out and left as if fleeing. I closed the door and, looking at a photo of my parents, murmured, "This is for the best. I'll become stronger, so watch over me." Thinking about whether my parents had reunited in heaven eased the sadness, and strangely, the loneliness dissipated. I gathered my resolve and started looking for a job. Just then, a friend contacted me. They had heard I was job hunting and reached out. They had a job in mind that suited my expertise. I was introduced and interviewed by HR, and was hired on the spot. A few days later, Dennis sent a message. "I was stubborn last time, my bad. I actually wanted to make things right with you, that's why I came to the house." Knowing it was all lies, I struggled with how to respond, eventually finding it too bothersome and choosing to ignore it. Despite my silence, a series of poem-like messages began to arrive. "We were like the sun and moon back then. I reached out but couldn't touch you. Those days of struggle are now memories. We can be within reach now, right? I can't go on without your love. Won't you give me that glowing love once more? My life is yours. You mean everything to me. Our love is eternal. No matter where, I will continue to love you. Your heart is where I belong." Each time a poem arrived, I showed it to my colleagues, wondering if it could be used for work. I work in editing. Sometimes, phrases like these can be useful. "Ah, here comes the emotionally unstable stalker. Great material when I'm out of ideas." Dennis has become a source of content, unbeknownst to him. But his messages only fill me with disgust, so I don't reply. Then one day, the doorbell rang. Peeking through the peephole, I saw Dennis. Thinking he had finally escalated to a direct approach, I called the police immediately. "Hey! I know you're there. I can see your car. Please, just hear me out. I'm really in trouble here. There was talk of moving into this house, and my parents seem to have sold our family home. I have nowhere to go. Please help." Despite his pleas from outside, it's a stranger's problem to me, not mine. Didn't he realize this wasn't his home when he didn't retract his claim after finding out? The messages sent showed he hadn't given up, but his and his family's naivety was astonishing. Soon, the police arrived and had to persuade Dennis, who resisted fiercely and was eventually taken away. Messages continued to flood in, and when I ignored them, my in-laws began contacting me. Initially, they called, but as I ignored them, they resorted to messaging. "How could you know we're in trouble and not help? Call us back immediately. Why not have a proper discussion once? We were family, after all. Isn't this too cold? We had to sell our home because of you, now living in an old apartment. Why won't you vacate the house? You received an inheritance from your father, right? We quit our jobs, expecting not to struggle. Take responsibility." Herman, my FIL, said this, and it was clear the apple didn't fall far from the tree. Did they really think their decisions would just work out? Their messages were infuriating. How much more could they belittle people? I had planned to ignore them, but ended up blocking Dennis and my in-laws. I considered changing my contact information, but didn't want to go that far because of them. I was at my limit of patience. After blocking them, I hoped for a peaceful life, but my expectations were naive. Later, my former in-laws showed up at my house. As much as I wanted them to stop, being known made such situations inevitable. Yet, leaving this house full of memories was unthinkable.
Come out already! Don't you know we're in trouble? Fix your mood already. I'm saying we should get back together. Ignoring someone in trouble is questionable behavior for anyone.
The doorbell kept ringing. The front door was being pounded on. I had called the police without mercy, but then suddenly, the noise stopped. Curious, I looked through the peephole and saw a man, familiar somehow, arguing with my former in-laws. More than talking, it seemed like a confrontation.
You're causing trouble. Go home, all of you.
The former in-laws were unsettled by the sudden appearance of the man.
What did you say? Who are you, anyway? Could you be the affair partner?
Despite being taken aback, the former in-laws retorted, to which the man responded with a look of disdain.
That kind of thinking is why nobody takes you seriously. Do you see your surroundings? This is a residential area. Look, your disturbance has drawn a crowd. It's really loud.
Although I could only see so much through the peephole, indeed, neighbors had started to gather. This is embarrassing for me too, I sighed. However, realizing their predicament, the former in-laws started panicking, stuttering.
But.
By then, the police had arrived. It seemed one of the officers had been here before, as they recognized Dennis and said,
You again?
Hearing this, the former in-laws' faces turned bright red.
Do you realize how much trouble you're causing? Have some shame,
the man said before leaving. Internally, I thanked him, feeling a bit relieved. Afterwards, the former in-laws were escorted away by the police amidst onlookers, who then dispersed. Hours later, the doorbell rang again, and peering through the peephole, I saw the man who had confronted my former in-laws. Surprised, I hesitated but eventually, cautiously opened the door to find the man smiling at me.
It's been a while. If you were back, you should have told me.
Though the man looked familiar, I couldn't place him until he offered a clue. Can't remember? Well, it has been over 10 years. It's me, Charles. Hearing the name jogged my memory. My childhood friend Charlie, or Charles.
What? Charlie. Now that you mention it, I can see the resemblance.
Charles was a childhood friend who lived next door, but we hadn't seen each other since he transferred to a sports-focused elementary school. Remembered, huh? I've moved back home too. So, we're neighbors again. That's amazing. It's been so long. And thank you for earlier. You really helped me out. As I expressed my gratitude again, Charles laughed.
Don't mention it,
he said, making me smile in appreciation. Caught up in nostalgia, our conversation grew lively, and I shared the recent events with him. Charles offered his support anytime, giving me a strong ally. Upon learning of my father's passing, Charles brought flowers as a tribute. He remembered my father, even though we were just kids back then. I was delighted to have someone with shared memories in my life. Later, I received a letter from a lawyer in the mail. Without any clue what it was about, I opened the envelope to find several papers inside. The documents claimed I had committed adultery during my marriage and demanded compensation. What is this? I wondered, noticing an unread message on my phone. It was a message from an address I didn't recognize. The message, from an unknown address, stated that my ex-husband, Dennis, had filed a lawsuit for adultery during our marriage. It threatened to inform my workplace unless I admitted guilt and settled immediately. Knowing no legitimate lawyer would send such a letter, it was clear this was the work of my former in-laws. The letter's authenticity was doubtful, so I decided to consult a real law firm. A genuine lawyer confirmed the letter was a complete fake. The supposed lawyer's name was unregistered, confirming my suspicions. Though I considered ignoring it, I decided to feign falling for their trick.
I've reviewed the content, but I can't recall any such incident. If you're accusing me of adultery, please provide evidence. You seem, but the emotional damage to Dennis is substantial, and the claim is for compensation for that.
No lawyer would proceed without evidence. It was clear they were operating on scant knowledge.
There's no fact of infidelity, so of course, there's no evidence. You mention emotional damage, but do lawyers act on such baseless claims? Dennis's plight has moved me, and I've taken on your case with the intention of helping. If you show some sincerity, we don't intend to make a big deal out of this.
Quite an emotional lawyer, aren't you?
Just to confirm, though you're probably aware, it's illegal for someone to impersonate a lawyer, with potential jail time or fines depending on the case. You are a real lawyer, right?
After that exchange, the previously prompt replies stopped. Wondering what their next move would be, I received a message.
Of course, I'm real, but I've been persuaded by your passion. We decided to drop the lawsuit. No, don't bother dropping it on my account.
I have no such passion, quite the opposite, in fact.
Since you've fabricated this affair, I'm inclined to fight this fully and am considering hiring a lawyer myself. I look forward to seeing you in court.
After my reply, there was no further contact. Though the messages stopped, the former in-laws again made a direct assault, screaming at my front door about how they were wrong and begging me to drop the lawsuit. Awoken by the commotion, I checked the time to find it was past 1 a.m. Frustrated and at my limit, I yelled,
"Enough! Stay away from me forever!"
as I flung open the door. The former in-laws, having never seen me so enraged, were stunned.
Toxic family. Try anything else, and see what happens.
Saying this, I grabbed my father's wooden sword that was by the door. Seeing the sword, the in-laws' faces turned pale, with Dennis muttering an apology.
If you're sorry, then disappear. Don't ever come back.
I yelled even louder, causing Cecile to tear up, looking like she might cry. Then, I saw police car lights approaching, indicating that the neighborhood had called them due to the late-hour disturbance. As they were taken away, Cecile desperately pointed at me, telling the police,
"That person! They tried to hit us with a wooden sword."
When the police turned to me, asking if that was true, I explained.
I was just startled by the incessant doorbell ringing and knocking, thinking it was an intruder. I had the wooden sword for self-defense.
The officers seemed convinced. Charles, who had been nearby and witnessed their frequent assaults, vouched for me. His testimony, along with their malicious behavior, led to their swift arrest. It was finally quiet. The next day, encouraged by Charles, I filed a complaint. Given the repeated police incidents, it was smoothly accepted. Charles had noticed the previous day's commotion and had come over, hearing my shouts. He later joked about how terrifying I sounded. Eventually, the former in-laws were issued a restraining order, halting their attacks. Moreover, someone had recorded the commotion and posted it online, leading to neighborhood gossip. Unable to move due to financial constraints, they likely live off the grandparents' pensions. As for me, my relationship with Charles quickly evolved, and after a few months, We started dating following his confession. Spending time with Charles, always making me laugh and showing kindness, felt incredibly fortunate. I'm thankful every day, considering it a blessing from my father. Can you increase the allowance? $3 a month isn't enough to live on. When I answered the call from my son, who lives alone and is a college student, he said something I hadn't anticipated at all.
What? $3 a month?
My voice flipped in surprise. What on earth was going on? I was certain I had been depositing $1,000 into my son's account every month. As I was confused, my son added more shocking news. I didn't want to tell you this since you got laid off, Mom, but it's really tough living on just $3 a month.
What? Laid off?
I work hard as a nurse, and even now, I'm just off a night shift. I haven't been laid off. To grasp the situation, I hurried to my son's apartment. Ringing the entrance doorbell, my son greeted me, but he looked thin and pale. He seemed to be cutting back significantly, not even using the heater in this cold. To save on electricity, I've been getting by with just a blanket. I've been desperately working part-time jobs, but with university studies and being busy every day, I thought I reached my limit and called you, Mom. When he showed me his bank book, indeed, only $3 had been deposited every month. I'm sorry for everything up to now, but I definitely transferred $1,000. How could this happen? For now, I'll go withdraw some money from the nearby ATM, I said. I quickly withdrew money from the ATM nearby and handed it to my son.
Is it okay to give me so much? Thank you, Mom. I didn't want to worry you, so I always acted cheerful whenever you called. But I'm glad I told you the truth today.
My heart ached for my son's bravery. It made no sense for something like this to happen. Could it be? I harbored a suspicion and told my son, I'll bring the money in person from next month until we figure out the cause. After I started handing the allowance to my son in person, my husband confronted me with a demonic expression.
Hey! Today's the day for the son's allowance, isn't it? Haven't you been slacking off?
My name is Vivian. After graduating from nursing school and starting to work as a nurse, which was my dream, I had been living a busy life. I had no luck with love and never really had a boyfriend, but I wasn't too bothered about it. I was hoping for a nice encounter someday, to date someone wonderful, taking things easy. However, it seems my parents were worried about me. Vivian, there's a son of someone I know who would be perfect for you. Want to meet him? Suddenly being told this by my dad was surprising.
What? What's this all of a sudden? Is this some kind of setup?
No. It's nothing as formal as a setup. Just going out for a meal together, the four of us. Persuaded by my dad, I ended up going to the meal. Nice to meet you. My name's Davin. The son of my father's acquaintance, Davin, was 3 years older than me and worked as a civil servant. He seemed serious, but his eyes would narrow into slits when he laughed, giving off a gentle vibe. Attracted to that vibe, I immediately took a liking to Davin. Davin seemed to like me as well, and we started going out for meals, just the two of us, eventually leading to dating. We got married about 2 years after we started dating and bought our first home at the same time. Me, who had never had a boyfriend for so long, things progressed smoothly after meeting Davin, surprising my father. He was more than surprised, he was delighted, and at the wedding, he was moved to tears. Blessed by many, we started a happy married life, living blissfully without any issues. Soon, we discovered a new life growing inside me, and I took maternity leave followed by parental leave. I gave birth to a healthy boy. our precious son, Armin, and grew healthily. Davin actively participated in childcare, helping with household chores even when he was tired from work. I was always grateful to him. Davin, thank you for always helping with the chores. It really helps.
What are you talking about? It's natural, we're a couple after all.
I truly adored Davin, showing his soft smile that I love so much as he said those words. When Armin was 1 year old, I returned to work and resumed my career as a nurse. Davin and I cooperated with dropping off and picking up from daycare, and we were able to support each other through daily life. As time passed, Armin became a high school senior. I turned 47 and Davin reached 50. Armin, I made some sandwiches for a late-night snack, if you'd like. I always brought a snack to Armin's room.
Thanks. Sandwiches tonight, huh? That's great. Looking forward to your snacks keeps me motivated to study at night.
Armin stopped his studies and thanked me with a full smile. I thought to myself how well-mannered he had grown up to be. Armin was preparing for his exams, aiming for a university in New York. If he got accepted, he would start living alone from fall, leaving this house. It would be lonely, but since it was Armin's chosen path, I decided to support him. And then came the exam day.
Well then, I'm off, Mom and Dad.
Putting on his shoes at the entrance, Armin, looking a bit nervous, energetically said goodbye.
Do your best. You'll be fine, Armin.
Take your time and read the questions carefully. Good luck. Encouraged by me and Davin, Armin nodded strongly and left for the venue. Armin successfully got accepted into his desired university.
Congratulations, Armin. It's sad to think of you leaving this house, but I'm so glad you got in. You really did great. Armin, you're a son to be proud of.
Davin and I prepared a feast to celebrate his university acceptance, and Armin looked really happy.
Thanks. It's all thanks to the two of you supporting me. I'll do my best in my studies at university.
Thus, from fall, Armin's living alone in New York was officially decided. To earn the money for Armin's living expenses, I decided to actively take on night shifts that came with extra pay. I was managing the household finances, and we had decided on a $1,000 allowance for Armin. Though I felt guilty about often leaving the house empty at night since I was a wife, I thought it was necessary for the allowance. However, Davin supported me without ever showing any displeasure. Vivian, thank you for working so hard. The plan for Armin's allowance is $1,000, right? I thought it would be tough to keep that amount every month, so it's really a big help.
I'm the one who's grateful, Davin. Your cooperation in various things has been a huge help.
With Davin actively doing the cooking and other household chores, I was able to work without worry. In the fall, Armin moved into the apartment we chose together, and we started the allowance. I transfer $1,000 to Armin's account every month. And in no time, several months passed.
Did you make sure to transfer the $1,000 to Armin this month?
You didn't forget, did you? Davin, concerned about Armin, would check with me without fail every month. Yes, I've sent it. I wouldn't forget. Relieved by my response, Davin smiled. Then, furrowing his brow, he voiced his worries.
I wonder if Armin is managing to live on his own okay. If he's keeping up with his classes. I hope he hasn't gotten involved with any strange friends at university.
It's okay. He wrote on WhatsApp that he's enjoying university life. You worry too much, Davin. Watching Davin worry so much about Armin, I found it endearing. I kept in touch with Armin regularly, and his cheerful updates reassured me. Time passed, and the season changed to winter. It was when I came home from a night shift and was changing in the bedroom as usual. I noticed an unfamiliar lip balm on the floor. Oh? Is this Davin's? That's unusual. I picked up the lip balm and examined the package closely. Davin usually didn't care about skincare products, and I had never seen him buy lip balm. It must have been the dry season that prompted him, but the design seemed more suited for a woman's taste than for men, with its slender, cute packaging. The cap was even decorated with glitter, and the product name was printed in pink letters. Feeling a bit curious, I put the lip balm in my pocket. That night, after Davin returned from work, I decided to ask him about the lip balm. Hey Davin, is this lip balm yours? When I asked, Davin showed a momentary look of surprise, but quickly smiled and took the lip balm from me.
Haha, yeah, that's my lip balm. I've been looking for it. Where did you find it?
In the bedroom. When I answered, Davin's eyes swam a bit. What's wrong? You seem a bit off.
What? No, haha. I was just embarrassed that buying lip balm as a man got discovered. Men don't buy lip balm, right?
Davin responded while scratching his head.
What are you talking about? It's not embarrassing at all. Plenty of men buy lip balm. But the packaging does look a bit feminine, so maybe choose something more simple next time. Oh, right. I will. I just panicked and didn't look closely when I bought it. I realized later that I picked up something a bit girly. Anyway, how about we watch a movie tonight? Remember, the movie Vivian wanted to see has just started streaming?
Though I felt a bit odd about Davin's attempt to change the subject, I had forgotten all about it once we started watching the movie. About a month had passed since then. As I was about to head home after finishing a night shift, I received a call from Armin. Hello, Armin? It's been a while. What's up? I greeted him cheerfully, but Armin responded with a weak voice. It's been a while. Sorry, I haven't been able to answer your calls lately. Indeed, recently, it had been hard to get through to Armin on the phone. Though I was worried, he always responded later on WhatsApp, so I wasn't overly concerned. It's okay. But you sound a bit down. What's wrong? The words that came back from Armin were unbelievable. Can you increase the allowance? $3 a month isn't enough to live on.
What? $3 a month?
My voice flipped in surprise. What did he mean by $3 a month? I was certainly sending $1,000 every month. I didn't want to tell you this since you got laid off, Mom, but living on just $3 a month is really tough.
What? Laid off?
Who was laid off? I had just finished a night shift. I couldn't make sense of the situation, confused. But it seemed Armin was just as puzzled, his bewilderment coming through the phone. Wait, Mom, you were laid off, right? So the allowance went from $1,000 to $3?
What? What are you talking about? I'm heading to your apartment right now.
Okay, I'll wait. I hung up the phone and tried to rush to the station, but my legs wouldn't move properly due to the shock. My heart was pounding, and I tried to calm myself down with deep breaths. Then, slapping my cheeks with both hands to psych myself up, I started walking to the station. Taking the bus and arriving at Armin's nearest station. I called him again to say I'd be there soon. When I rang the doorbell at Armin's apartment entrance, he soon peeked out. Welcome, Mom. Armin looked thin and pale, as if he might collapse at any moment. Armin. Seeing him like this, my heart ached, and I felt tears welling up. Inside, the heater wasn't on despite the cold. You haven't turned on the heater. You'll catch a cold, let's turn it on.
No, we can't. It costs too much. I'm getting by with just a blanket.
Armin shivered as he spoke, and I quietly told him.
Listen, Armin, I've been sending you $1,000 every month since fall. And I haven't been laid off. What? But only $3 has been deposited each month. I'm not lying. That's why I called you, Mom. I've been desperately working part-time, but with university studies and being busy every day, I thought I reached my limit and called you.
I didn't think Armin was lying. He's not the kind to make up such things. And seeing how thin he's gotten and his living conditions without even the heater on, it must be true that only $3 has been deposited.
I'm not doubting you, but we need to figure out what's going on. Can you show me your bank book?
Okay, wait a moment. Armin retrieved his neatly kept bank book from a shelf in the corner of his tidy room and showed it to me. Indeed, just as Armin had said, only $3 had been deposited each month.
I'm sorry, Armin, but I definitely transferred $1,000.
What could have happened?
For now, I'm going to withdraw some money from a nearby ATM.
Saying that, I immediately withdrew a substantial amount of money from the ATM and returned to Armin's apartment.
Armin, please take this money for now. Until we figure out why this happened, I'll bring you the money in person from next month.
Is it really okay to give me so much?
Thank you, Mom.
I didn't want to worry you, so I've always pretended to be cheerful when you contacted me. But I'm glad I told you the truth today. Armin smiled with his thin face, and my heart ached at his bravery. It's unthinkable for something like this to happen. Could it be? But for now, more than anything, I'm worried about Armin's health.
Thank you for calling, Armin. Make sure to use the heater properly from now on. And I'm going to the supermarket now. I'll make you lots of your favorite hamburgers and curry. Really?
Armin's eyes sparkled. Then I went to the supermarket, bought ingredients, returned to the apartment, and cooked a lot of food. Armin ate, saying how delicious it was. I also froze what could be saved, so he wouldn't have to worry about food for a while.
All right, I'll come to give you your allowance again next month.
Saying that, I left Armin's apartment. The weekend, a month later. When Davin came home from work, he confronted me with a demonic expression without even saying hello.
Hey! Today is the day for Armin's allowance, right? Haven't you been slacking off?
What?
I just handed the allowance to Armin directly today. Is there a problem? What's with the sudden outburst?
When I responded, Davin looked confused.
And? Then, that's fine,
he said and went to change clothes in the bedroom. After changing into his loungewear and coming back to the living room, I immediately questioned him.
Why did you think the allowance hadn't been sent yet? Well, that's because it's payday and the day to send Armin's allowance, but Vivian didn't report it. So I was just a little concerned. Let's end this conversation.
Davin, angry and trying to quickly end the conversation, was definitely acting strangely.
Then I have another question. What now?
Davin raised his voice in annoyance.
Remember the lip balm found in the bedroom? You said you bought it, but was it actually from someone you're having an affair with? No! That's not it at all!
Davin immediately denied loudly. Continuing.
That lip balm is mine! I bought it! Don't make me repeat the same thing! You're acting strange today!
He said, yelling.
You're the strange one, not me. You're usually calm, but you're acting weird today.
I countered, and Davin raised his voice in denial.
I'm not strange. I'm doing fine.
Really? Well, I knew something like this would happen today. That's why I invited some guests over. People you know very well. I said and opened the door to the room we use for guests. Everyone, thank you for waiting. Please come this way. As I called out, 3 people appeared in front of Davin.
Nadia! And Dad and Mom too!
Davin was evidently shocked, his eyes widening as much as possible. The woman called Nadia muttered with a displeased tone,
"Ugh, this is the worst,"
and sat down at the dining table with an arrogant attitude. The in-laws glared at Davin, whose face turned pale immediately. Flashback to 3 weeks earlier. I consulted my father-in-law, a former bank employee, about why only $3 was being deposited into Armin's account. He immediately investigated, and it turned out there were 2 accounts under Armin's name. Davin was the one who went to open Armin's account. Though I said I would do it, Davin insisted.
"Let me handle it,"
and took the initiative. According to the bank staff, Davin had opened 2 accounts under Armin's name, claiming one for living expenses and the other for tuition. The card and bank book for the account I was depositing $1,000 into each month were in Davin's possession. Davin had persuaded Armin. "I'll manage one of the accounts for you, so I'll keep the card and bank book," he said, somewhat forcibly taking the card and bank book. And so, Davin was withdrawing the $1,000 I transferred every month. To make it seem like he was still providing support, he deposited $3 into the account Armin had. Knowing the truth, I felt a surge of anger and wondered what Davin was doing with the $1,000 each month. That's when I remembered the cute packaged lip balm I had found in the bedroom before. Deciding to act, I hired a detective to investigate Davin's actions. The investigation revealed, as expected, that Davin was having an affair. The other woman's name was Nadia, and she was one of Davin's subordinates. Davin had been frequently bringing Nadia to our home while I was on night shifts. With the evidence gathered, today I called Nadia, along with my in-laws, to confront Davin about his infidelity. "Davin, I think you're aware by now, but all your misdeeds have been exposed," I said coldly, causing Davin's already pale face to turn even paler, his lips trembling slightly. "So, the $1,000 I was transferring for Armin, you've been giving it all to Nadia, right?" Despicable. According to the detective's investigation, you've been buying expensive necklaces from brand stores for Nadia. What in the world are you doing? As I confronted him, Davin snapped back.
"It's not just that. I didn't spend all $1,000 on gifts. Nadia's mother has been sick. She's been hospitalized for a long time with a serious condition. I was helping out with her medical expenses. I was just trying to help people."
Davin seems to claim this. Nadia, is that true? Was your mother really sick? Remember, lying will only make things worse later. Please tell us the truth. When I asked Nadia, she sulked for a while before responding. It's a lie. Obviously, it's a lie. My mother is healthy and working in the fields back home. The sickness was a lie.
"What? You lied to me. Don't mess with me. How much money do you think I've given you?"
Davin yelled, furious. However, Nadia, unfazed and mockingly laughing, said,
"Huh. It's your fault for being deceived. Ah, I thought I found a good cash cow. Time's up, I guess. I was hoping to milk it for a few more years, but what a miscalculation. Cash cow. You said you loved me, was that also a lie? Hey, your feelings for me were real, right? You love me, don't you?"
Davin, in his anger and confusion, seemed to forget that I and his parents were present. I wish I hadn't had to see my husband like this. Seeing Davin cling to a younger woman was disgraceful and nauseating. I felt like vomiting but managed to hold it back.
Look, why would a young and cute girl like me seriously fall for an old man like Davin? Ridiculous. How much worth do you think you have? Take a good look at yourself in the mirror.
Nadia laughed heartily. Though what Nadia said was true, her sheer audacity angered me.
So, that's how it is.
Davin was stunned, and I thrust 3 documents at him. One was the bank transaction history, the second was evidence of the affair, and the third was divorce papers.
Divorce papers? Are we getting divorced?
Davin was fixated on the third document, the divorce papers, without even looking at the first 2.
Of course. Why should I continue to be married to a scum who spends his son's allowance on his mistress? Well, I didn't intend to get divorced. I mean, it's a separate issue.
Davin's ridiculous excuses made me snap and I yelled at him.
You didn't intend to get divorced, but you cheated. And what you did to Armin is unforgivable. Is this how a parent acts? $3 a month isn't enough to live on. Armin has been working hard, saving every penny, getting thinner, not even using the heater. You're the worst. Just sign the divorce papers now. Well, I do feel bad for Armin, but I heard Nadia's mother was sick, and Nadia herself kept asking for things, so I really needed the money.
Davin rambled on with excuses. My father-in-law suddenly struck him hard.
Ah!
Davin let out a short scream and fell. Simultaneously, my father-in-law said,
Idiot!
Angry shouts filled the air.
You are truly a foolish and despicable son. Just sign the divorce papers like Vivian said, now.
Ugh. Davin was dumbstruck, and I sternly told him.
Also, obviously, I'll be demanding compensation. The money you embezzled will, of course, be added on top. Compensation!
Davin's eyes widened in shock, letting out a strange noise.
I'll be demanding compensation from Nadia as well, so be prepared for that.
When I addressed Nadia, her face turned pale, and she started yelling.
Wait a minute! Why me? I won't pay any compensation.
Why?
Because you had an affair with a married man. I have the right to demand compensation from you. Please make sure to pay it.
As I responded with disdain, Nadia glared at Davin and said,
Davin should pay for me. I don't have any money. I spend all my salary on cosmetics, clothes, and bags every month. I have 0 savings. Don't be ridiculous. I don't have any money either. You've taken everything from me. If I hadn't been deceived by you, none of this would have happened. You're a devil.
As they began their ugly fight, Davin suddenly turned to me, pleading. Look, Vivian, please. Spare me the compensation. I'll concede to the divorce. I'll agree to it, so could you please not demand compensation? Please. I really don't have any money. Look at me. Haven't we supported each other a lot until now? Seeing Davin beg with tears in his eyes brought up nothing but disgust. My love for Davin had completely vanished when I learned he was squandering Armin's allowance on his mistress.
If you keep this up, I'll double the compensation amount. Just sign the divorce papers now. I'll formally demand the compensation later.
With that firm statement, Davin seemed to realize my mind was made up and signed the divorce papers. I've signed. Is this okay? Davin said in a lifeless voice as he handed me the divorce papers. Yes, thank you. Now, would you please leave this house?
Eh?
Davin sounded foolish.
It's obvious, isn't it? We're getting divorced. We can't live together anymore. You, being the guilty spouse, should leave. Now, get out, both of you.
I yelled and drove Davin and Nadia out. My in-laws repeatedly apologized.
We're so sorry for our foolish son.
But they weren't at fault. I was truly grateful to my father-in-law for uncovering Davin's wrongdoing. After thanking my in-laws sincerely and seeing them off, I immediately went to the city hall to submit the divorce papers. That marked the end of my marriage to Davin. Later, I hired a lawyer and demanded compensation from Davin and Nadia. Despite being public servants, they had been openly dating, and there had been rumors of their affair for a while. The compensation demand put a mental strain on them, leading to repeated mistakes at work. They were moved to a department with less responsibility, faced with disdain due to the rumors of their affair, and Nadia ended up resigning voluntarily. Davin was disowned by his parents and led a difficult life in a cheap apartment while paying me compensation. Nadia had her parents pay off the compensation, but as a result, was called back to her rural home. She ended up helping with farm work under her parents' strict supervision. I received a call from Nadia's parents apologizing earnestly and learned of her current situation. They assured me they'd keep a close eye on Nadia to prevent any more wrongdoing. Eventually, I sold my home and moved closer to Armin's apartment. We often meet and update each other on our lives. I informed Armin of the divorce the day it happened. Davin had lied to Armin, claiming I was fired and could only send $3 a month. Armin was shocked to learn the truth from me. That can't be. Was it a mistake? Dad was always so kind. Hearing Armin's tremulous voice pained me. Indeed, Davin had been a kind husband and father. But everything changed once he started the affair. Thinking back to our happy family life hurts, but I can't dwell on the past. I must move forward. Armin gradually recovered from the shock and eventually regained his cheerful demeanor. Time passed, and Armin graduated from university. He secured a job at a renowned company, marking the end of my parenting duties. I continue to work hard as a nurse and will keep doing so as long as my health allows. My in-laws, who sent their congratulations for Armin's graduation, and I maintain a good relationship, leading a fulfilling life both personally and professionally. Wait, are you trying to use the bathroom? Dirty old people are banned from using it. We use that toilet too, you know. If you guys use it, our brand new toilet will get dirty immediately, won't it? Sorry, but you'll have to make do with peeing in the bushes outside. Oh, and don't do it in the garden, okay? If you dirty our precious home even a little, I'll never forgive you. Both we were taken aback by Emily and Wilson's words. A bathroom ban? That's just unthinkable. No matter how much they dislike us, such behavior is inexcusable. We have endured harsh words from our son and his wife before. As we're the kind of people who dislike fights, we've always quietly accepted their treatment. But now, we've reached our limit. We need to make it clear what happens when they make enemies of us. I started plotting a scenario for revenge. I'm sure this plan will work. My name is Sarah, a 62-year-old homemaker. I live with my husband. I met Johnson, my husband, at the company where we used to work. After Johnson's persistent pursuit, we started dating and smoothly transitioned into marriage. I was blessed with a son with Johnson. A lively boy. We named him Wilson and raised him with care. Wilson grew up healthily and eventually found a job. He married a woman named Emily and built a family. I remember the feeling genuinely happy when he first introduced Emily to us. But that happiness didn't last long. Everything went awry when I realized why she had married him. After marriage, they lived with us. One day, Wilson and Johnson were out, and only Emily and I were at home. At first, we were chatting amicably in the living room, but then Emily's mobile phone rang. It seemed she received a call. "Sorry, Sarah, it looks like it's from a friend." With that, she excused herself and went back to her room. Left alone in the living room, I decided to clean the house to pass the time. As I was passing Emily's room, I inadvertently overheard her conversation. Her voice was so loud that I couldn't help but hear. "Seriously, those old folks are living too long. If they suddenly died, we could get the inheritance. I married into the family for the president's fortune, but this is just hell." Her words felt like a cold shower to me. Actually, Johnson's father was the president of well-known top-tier company. However, the company was set to be inherited by his brother. Still, being part of the president's family, Johnson had some share of the wealth. It turned out Emily had married Wilson with that very intention in mind. They probably believed that once we passed away, the inheritance would become theirs. In fact, we had always treated Wilson and his wife with this in mind. Such behavior couldn't be tolerated. I shared this with Johnson that night. Initially, he was shocked, saying, "Really?" but he trusted my words. After discussing, we decided not to act immediately but to observe if Emily would reveal her true intentions. Maybe, in the meantime, she might change her attitude and start treating us like a real family. It was a decision made with the faint hope. But things didn't go as expected. To test Wilson and his wife, we observed their behavior. We invited them out, asked for help with chores, and so on. Gradually, they seemed to find us a nuisance, and their attitude changed. "Wilson, you're free now, right? I'm sorry to ask you, but can you give me a hand to do the laundry? My back hurts." One day, seeing Wilson relaxing in the living room, I asked him. Although Emily had been the one to speak harshly that day, Johnson suspected they might be in this together. We suspect that maybe Wilson feels in the same way. So, I started to approach Wilson to understand his feelings. At my request, Wilson looked up from his mobile phone, sighed with annoyance, and said, "Can't you do that yourself, Mom? You're a mother, after all. Shouldn't you be able to handle the household chores by yourself?" He then returned his gaze to his mobile phone. It became clear that he had no intention of helping. His attitude seemed to say, "I have no intention of being a family with you." This thought sent a chill down my spine. "Don't say that. Family should help each other when in trouble. You have your own family now, Wilson. You need to act responsibly." My voice trembled, reflecting my fear. If my suspicions were true, it meant that even Wilson, whom we had lovingly raised, was betraying us. That was something I couldn't bear. Desperately, I pleaded, "Please help me." But Wilson didn't even look up from his phone or show any sign of getting up from the sofa. His unwillingness to help was evident. Persisting in my request, he let out a heavy sigh and continued. "Look," he continued, "enough is enough. Yes, you're my mother, but that doesn't give you the right to be selfish. I have a wife, Emily, and I need to work for her. I'm already exhausted every day, and now you're asking me to do chores too? That's cruel. Don't ask us to do such things anymore. We are essentially strangers." Essentially strangers. Those words pierced deeply into my heart. It confirmed my fears. Both Wilson and Emily seem to be after Johnson's inheritance. They seem indifferent to us, thinking as long as they receive the inheritance, that's all that matters. This betrayal from family deeply wounded me. Yet, we couldn't foresee something even worse. I immediately told Johnson about Wilson's possible intent for the inheritance. Johnson, seemingly already convinced. "I thought as much." He nodded. And so, our family dynamics became distorted. Amidst all this, Wilson and his wife decided to move out. When they brought it up, we couldn't help but feel relieved. By then, living with them had become unbearable. Even sharing the same house with them was distressing. They wanted to live in a new single-family home, which would require a significant amount of money. To hasten their move, we decided to provide financial assistance.
Dad, Mom, thanks. Family is indeed valuable.
Knowing the underlying meaning of Wilson's words, we couldn't genuinely rejoice. The construction of their new house was completed, and it was the day of their move. They packed up some of their belongings and left the house. A week later, we visited their new home with a housewarming gift. Though I didn't want to go, I remembered my father-in-law teaching about maintaining certain courtesies, so I decided to endure it a bit. Nice house, isn't it? Smells like new construction. Their home was more beautiful than expected, probably due to the money spent on it. After being shown around various rooms, when we gave the celebration gift in the living room.
Thank you so much,
she said. She seemed pleased as she put away the gift. While chatting in the living room, I felt the need to use the restroom. Where's the bathroom? May I use it? I said. To my request, Wilson and his wife responded unbelievably. Wait, are you trying to use the bathroom? Dirty old people are banned from using it. We use that toilet too, you know. If you use it, our brand new toilet will get dirty immediately, won't it? Followed by his words.
Sorry, but you'll have to make do with peeing in the bushes outside. Oh, and don't do it in the garden, okay? If you dirty our precious home even a little, I'll never forgive you.
Their words made me feel dizzy. It was too cruel, regardless of how much they disliked us. At that moment, they were like strangers to me. There was no familial affection left. That's why I decided to start my revenge. I planned to ruin them thoroughly. I secretly devised a scenario for it. Exchanging glances with Johnson, who was just as stunned. It seemed Johnson was thinking the same as me. We don't want to be a nuisance, and since we've given the housewarming gift, maybe we should leave if we're not wanted. There was no reason to stay in their house any longer. We had fulfilled our duty by giving a housewarming gift. If they were going to be that terrible to us, we didn't need to stay. Right. Our presence here only seems to bother them. It's better to leave now. I had anticipated being unwelcome, but to be told things like being banned from using the toilet or to go in the bushes was too much.
Yeah, leave right now. Don't want this house getting old and musty because of some old people. Don't stay any longer than necessary.
Old people making the house musty? That's just absurd. Realizing how much my own son despised us was a bit of a shock. But I couldn't see Wilson as my son anymore. I'd deal with these conflicting feelings later. For now, the priority was to leave. And don't come over unless absolutely necessary. We've got your gift, so you're of no use to us now. Maybe see you at the baby shower, but that's it. Even though she demanded us to leave right away, she still wants a gift. What greedy people. Though giving them gifts was burdensome, we were fortunately not short on money. So, to keep the peace and calm myself, I accepted it.
Then let's sever ties. If you despise us so much, it must be hard to continue as a family, right? Anything is fine with me as long as we don't have to deal with you and your family, who are troublesome.
Are they high on their own anger? Emily quickly agreed to my suggestion. Likely not understanding the consequences of her decision. We gathered our things and left Wilson's house. They hardly even saw us out. But this was just the beginning of our revenge. I couldn't wait to see them fall into the hell we were about to create. I can't help but look forward to that moment. Back home, I shared the revenge plan with Johnson. He said, "This is going to be interesting." He laughed and was in agreement with my plan. They say spouses become like mirrors of each other, and I really felt that was true. Since then, we had been very busy. To complete our revenge, various preparations were necessary. Before we knew it, about a week had passed. Despite being busy, we were leading a calm life without any major incidents with Wilson and his wife. But it seemed about time for a disruption. As I was expecting this, the phone rang. Johnson and I exchanged glances. Sure enough, it was Wilson on the line. I put the call on speaker so Johnson could hear and spoke to Wilson. "Hello, Wilson? What's up? Did something happen?" It was surprising he called so nonchalantly after what had happened. Normally, after such an incident, I'd think it would be awkward to make a phone call. But Wilson, sounding cornered and desperate, blurted out.
"What's happened, you ask? What have you two done? Thanks to you, I'm in a terrible situation. Do something about it now."
Wilson's statement was disjointed, and I couldn't understand what he was talking about. Of course, I had orchestrated this revenge, so I could guess what might be happening to him.
"What exactly do you mean? Tell me everything from the start, I don't understand."
Since I had no idea what he was accusing us of, I couldn't respond. Urging Wilson to explain, he started his story in an angry tone. It seemed the trouble started when he went to work after the incident. While working, Wilson noticed something unusual. The looks directed at him by his colleagues were unusually cold. Wilson, who tends to be overly concerned with others' perceptions, found it unbearable to stay at work and left early that day. Hoping it was just his imagination, he went to work again the next day, but the cold stares remained unchanged. He confronted a colleague about it, but all he got in response was, "Ask yourself." Just that, and they wouldn't tell me anything more. Furthermore, it wasn't just his department colleagues who were giving him cold stares. It seemed as if everyone in the company, from high-ranking superiors to colleagues in other departments, were looking at him with disdain. He felt as if every employee he encountered was regarding him with contempt. Despite racking his brain, Wilson couldn't think of a reason for the cold treatment at work. He hadn't made any mistakes on the job. Eventually, he surmised that my husband, Johnson, a member of the company's founding family, and I must have been involved.
"What have you two done? Because of you, I can't work anymore. You need to take responsibility."
Wilson lashed out at us one-sidedly. Indeed, the frigid reception he faced wasn't a figment of his imagination, it was a part of our scheme. We had promptly informed my brother-in-law about the ordeal with Wilson and his wife. He values us greatly and was furious upon hearing it. Unfortunately, my brother-in-law isn't one to keep secrets. He inadvertently leaked our story to his secretary and other managerial staff. Soon enough, the entire company knew about their misdeeds, and everyone began to scorn Wilson.
"This is too much. Fix it now. I can't work in that kind of environment."
Indeed, someone like him, who is easily swayed by others' opinions, couldn't possibly continue working in such a hostile environment. However, his employment was actually a result of nepotism. He had been lazy during his student days, lacking notable educational achievements or qualifications. Since he couldn't find a satisfactory job, his sympathetic uncle hired him at his company. Could someone like Wilson really manage a proper job search? From my perspective, it seemed unlikely. That company was his only option. Yet, working there under current circumstances was impossible for him.
"Please, you have to do something. I can't work under those stairs. You caused this, right? Then fix it,"
he yelled over the phone. But I had no intention of forgiving him.
"We've disowned you, remember? Why are you asking for help now?" "That was all Emily's doing. I always considered you and Dad as my family. Families are supposed to help each other, right? So, help me."
Indeed, families should help each other. But he had misunderstood the meaning of family. You help because they are your family, not treat them as family only when help is needed. Feeling the conversation was pointless, I ended the call with him. Afterward, my phone kept ringing incessantly, so I blocked his number. That was how we completely severed ties with our own son. Our revenge was far from over. The day after our conversation with Wilson, my phone rang again. This time, it was Emily.
"Sarah, please open the entrance. I have something to discuss, including about Wilson. Let me in quickly."
As soon as I answered the phone, she blurted out such things. It seemed that she, thinking it best to resolve matters directly, was waiting at the entrance of our house, eager to talk. Well, it was our former house, after all.
"Emily, we're not at that house anymore."
Indeed, it was our former home. Since then, We had sold the house where we lived with them and moved to a new home. A brand new, sparkling single-family home. Our new home, chosen with a slightly competitive spirit, was more spacious and grander than Wilson and Emily's.
What? Then where are you? Things are terrible here. If we don't know where you are, how can we receive the inheritance? Tell me your current address.
She seemingly failed to comprehend the meaning of disownment. To disown means no longer being family. An inheritance is not passed to non-family members. We had even updated our will to ensure that, come what may, Wilson and his wife would not receive any inheritance. However, she appeared to misunderstand, thinking that if some family connection remained, they could still inherit.
Emily, you can no longer receive any inheritance. We've disowned you, remember? We're no longer family. Why would we give an inheritance to someone who's not family?
I was astonished at her lack of understanding. Her ignorance was so profound that it was almost laughable. Surprised by my response, she exclaimed.
What?
She exclaimed in a loud voice.
What? I didn't know that. That's a real problem if we can't get the inheritance. Let's forget about the disownment, okay? We're still family, right?
Her self-centeredness was astounding. It was baffling how someone could be so obsessed with money. Her illogical and selfish statements left me speechless. Misinterpreting my silence as agreement, she continued.
How about we live together? You've moved out of this house, right? I just realized how lonely it is without you, Sarah. Our house is big, so you can live here too. Let's live together as a family.
And yet, this was the same person who had once called us dirty old people and drove us out. Now she was even suggesting living together, clearly all for the sake of inheritance. It was obvious that restarting life with them was out of the question. I wondered if she even understood that. Could she really not understand even that?
Sorry, but we'll have to decline. And from now on, please don't contact us. We've disowned you, so we're no longer family. And non-family members won't inherit anything. Please understand and give up. No! That's unacceptable! Please, Sarah, forgive us!
When I firmly declared our disownment, Emily seemed to finally grasp its meaning and desperately clung to any hope. But my decision was final. And likely Johnson's as well. Therefore, I ended the call with her and immediately blocked her number. This way, she couldn't contact us again. They wouldn't know our current whereabouts. Essentially, we've completed our disownment. We felt a sense of relief, having cleanly severed this unpleasant connection. Later, I heard from acquaintances and brother-in-law that Wilson and Emily began fighting incessantly over the inheritance and their jobs, leading to a divorce. They argued bitterly over alimony and property division, even hiring lawyers and taking their disputes to court. After the divorce was finalized, Emily returned to her parents' home. She seemed certain that her biological parents would accept her, but when they actually saw her and learned of the situation, they were furious. Apparently, she was promptly kicked out of the house. Wilson, having quit his job, struggled to find new employment and is now working tirelessly in part-time roles to make ends meet. Meanwhile, Johnson and I are enjoying a peaceful and happy life. The weight of the Wilson affair lifted, we've found newfound freedom. We're planning to go on a trip soon, taking brother-in-law and his wife along. Johnson and I have been making plans for this trip together. It's our way of thanking him for his help in our revenge. We are carefully planning this vacation. Family is about supporting each other and helping in times of need. But that doesn't always mean being related by blood. Some, like Wilson and Emily, disregard even their own family. This incident has deeply ingrained that lesson in us.
With this, I'll finally get the inheritance.
Right before losing consciousness, I heard my husband's voice. I had just finished a hospital visit and was about to head home when suddenly a car sped towards me. I realized it too late to escape and was hit. Amidst the intense pain and fading consciousness, I heard what my husband had said. What did he mean by inheritance? Why was he even here? As I tried to make sense of it, I lost consciousness without seeing him. 3 days later, I woke up and saw on the TV that my husband was acting the part of a grieving, loving husband. I was furious. He was garnering sympathy while pretending to be a good person, even though he had schemed everything. I couldn't let him have his way anymore and decided to seek revenge. I am Jennifer Brown, 29 years old. A music teacher. I've always loved the piano and dreamed of becoming a pianist since childhood. After practicing desperately every day, I managed to get into a music college, but I was overwhelmed by the high level of competition and eventually gave up. I obtained a teaching license and became a music teacher. Currently, I work at a local public middle school, where I'm not just a teacher but also the advisor of the choir club, leading a busy life. Being a teacher is tough, but the kids admire me calling teacher, so I was enjoying fulfilling days. Last year, I married Robert, whom I had dated since college. We were at the peak of happiness in both our personal and professional lives, but it didn't last. My husband Robert was just a mess. He worked at a bar, and because of the nature of his job, he had late shift. Our daily rhythms were completely different, and we began to drift apart. He often drinks after work, so I find him sleeping at the entrance returning home drunk in the morning. Initially, I thought it was just part of his job. But when I came home tired from work, I found clothes thrown about, and the table littered with empty instant noodle cups and finished drink bottles. Seeing this mess every day, my anger just kept building up.
Robert, put your clothes in the laundry. And can you clean up your mess?
What? Stop nagging. I'll do it later.
Later? You always say that and never do it. Do it now.
Frowning, Robert clicked his tongue in annoyance.
If it bothers you so much, do it yourself. You're such a nagging woman. What? I'm tired from work every day. Why do I have to take care of you? Can't you at least take care of your own things?
I'm tired too, you know. Do you think you're the only one? Or do you think you're superior to me because you earn more? I denied that, and Robert sighed.
Then you should do it.
Don't order me around like that. Saying this, Robert lazily lay down on the sofa and started fiddling with his mobile phone. Despite shorter working hours than me, he never helped with housework and just drank around and slept at home. I ended up doing all the cleaning and laundry. Recently, our dates had stopped and we just argued more. Robert was very handsome. He was popular in college that he even had fans from neighboring universities. I felt superior just being able to marry him. I was smitten with the gentlemanly Robert during our courtship, but now I wondered why I married him. However, everyone has their good and bad sides. I thought maybe it was okay for someone handsome to have a flawed personality, so I decided to bear with it. Half a year after getting married, Robert, who usually went out even on his days off, seemed restless one morning. When I finished cleaning up after breakfast, he called me. Actually, the bar's been doing poorly lately. I'm short on cash. Can you lend me some? What? Are you that short on money? What did you spend it on? He had been saying for months that his salary had decreased and he couldn't pay living expenses. But his salary was supposed to be entirely disposable, yet he claimed to be short on money. You know, sometimes I go out for drinks with friends. Alcohol costs a lot.
If it's really for the shop, you should get reimbursed for expenses. It's ridiculous to pay out of your own pocket.
No, it's not that. I mean, I need it for studying. I have to know other bars' menus and stuff for research. Robert's stammering explanation seemed suspicious.
How much do you need?
You'll give it to me? $200. Just $200 is fine. I sighed, and Robert happily hugged me. I was exasperated by his opportunistic behavior, but it was exactly this kind of charm that always ensnared me. I took out $200 from my wallet and handed it to him. He hugged me again. I really made the right choice marrying Jennifer. Thank you so much. Because of our constant fighting these days, I felt over the moon when he hugged me while I was exasperated with him. I felt like I had to support him, who had a tough job. But then, he started asking for money almost every month. The amount he wanted kept increasing, and before I knew it, I was giving him as much as $1,000 monthly. For me, just a teacher, it was quite tough to pay $1,000 in addition to regular living expenses. Despite my efforts to save, my savings were rapidly depleting.
Robert, can you pay back even a little of the money I gave you?
What?
Why all of a sudden? You gave me that money, why should I give it back?
It's getting hard to make ends meet. If I keep giving you money, I won't be able to pay for gas or water. When I spoke to Robert before he went to work, he made a face as if it was a hassle. I can't help it, my salary is too low. You could if you tried to save a bit, like cutting down on eating out.
I'm doing that for the bar.
Are you trying to interfere with my work? Then sell your piano. That'll bring in good money. Saying that, he left the house. My piano is as precious to me as life itself. It was a gift from my father when I was 2 years old. I need it for practice as a music teacher, there's no way I can part with it. Yet, Robert, who casually drinks around, coldly suggested selling it, which infuriated me. After that, Robert and I stopped speaking. He didn't try to talk to me either, and our marital relationship was practically in ruins. I was contemplating divorce when an incident occurred. While playing the piano, a pain shot through my wrist. The pain, like an electric shock from the wrist to the fingertips, became unbearable. When I visited the hospital, I was diagnosed with tendinitis.
If it gets worse, you might need surgery, so you should get a thorough examination at a bigger hospital.
Told this at a nearby clinic, I was given a referral letter. Then, I headed to the general hospital in the next town. If my wrist pain worsens, I might not be able to play the piano anymore. And if I can't play, I might lose my job. If that happens, I don't know what to do to make a living. Having focused solely on playing the piano and not having done any other job, I thought changing careers would be difficult. Before the consultation, I felt anxious and heavy-footed. However, the doctor, after seeing the X-rays, smiled and said it was okay.
Let's observe for now. If possible, please rest your hand. Don't play the piano for about a week, and if the pain worsens, come back for another visit.
I was relieved to hear that it wasn't serious enough for surgery. It happened when I stepped out the parking, just as I was about to leave the hospital triumphantly.
Watch out!
I heard a woman scream and turned around in shock to see a car speeding towards me. I wanted to run, but my body wouldn't move properly. Then, an immense impact hit my body.
It's an accident! Call an ambulance! Get a doctor!
I heard various voices. Amidst fading consciousness, a familiar voice reached my ears.
With this, the inheritance plan will work out.
I heard a distinctly familiar voice amidst the others. But I lost consciousness before I could identify the speaker. 3 days later, I woke up to the ceiling of a hospital room. When I tried to sit up, intense pain shot through my body. Ow, it hurts.
Ms. Brown!
Can you hear me?
I'll go get the doctor, just wait here.
I couldn't respond to the nurse's voice. She hurried out, and then the doctor came running.
Ms. Brown, do you know where you are?
The hospital?
Correct. You were hit by a car after your last visit and have been hospitalized. You haven't woken up for 3 days, so we were worried.
I was shocked to hear it had been 3 days, but I couldn't voice it. The nurse and doctor then explained my current situation. I had been hit by a car and suffered multiple complex fractures throughout my body. I was still in a period of absolute rest, not even allowed to sit up.
It must be boring just lying there. Do you want to watch TV? You can watch it while lying down.
The nurse turned on the TV for me, ensuring my comfort. Coincidentally, the TV was covering my accident.
Oh, you probably don't want to see this, do you? Should I change the channel?
No, please leave it. I want to watch. I couldn't take my eyes off the news. It reported that a woman named Amelia, who hit me with her car, was arrested for dangerous driving causing injury. Seeing the perpetrator's photo, everything made sense to me. Then I realized that the voice talking about receiving an inheritance when I was hit was Robert's. He had intentionally run me over with a car for money. However, the news only reported that he was in Amelia's car as a friend, nothing more. The screen switched to Robert.
I never imagined that the car I was in would cause an accident and hit my wife. I keep seeing that scene in my dreams. I can't sleep at night.
I exploded with anger at his tearful interview. This accident was undoubtedly schemed by Robert. I couldn't stand him causing me this accident for inheritance and then continuing to act like a good husband. Determined not to let Robert have his way anymore, I vowed revenge. 4 hours after waking up, Robert burst into the room, panting.
Jennifer! Thank goodness you're awake!
I shook off Robert's hand as he tried to grasp mine uninvited. What's wrong? Are you still in pain?
Yes, I am.
My whole body is in excruciating pain, all because of you. What are you talking about? The atmosphere grew tense, making even the nearby nurse's expression stiffen. Trying to lighten the mood, Robert forced a smile. Are you still confused? Is there anything you want to eat? I'll go buy it. I don't want anything.
Can you please leave my room right now?
Why are you saying that? Jennifer, you're acting strange.
It's not strange at all. The accident was schemed by you for the inheritance, wasn't it?
Robert looked surprised at my words. What are you talking about? Why would I do something like that?
Really? Then why did you take out a high-value life insurance policy a month before the accident?
You said you couldn't even afford to pay the living expenses because your salary was low. I was told it's good to have insurance in case something happens. Amelia, the girl who hit Jennifer with her car, she works in insurance sales. She used to work part-time at my bar. Robert had given the same explanation when he took out the insurance. They had been close since her part-time days, and after she got a job at an insurance company, they kept in touch. He said he felt sorry for her as she was struggling to sell policies. As he worried about getting scolded by her boss and having low pay, he decided to take out a policy to help her out. The insurance was taken out because you, Jennifer, earn more than me, right? If something happened and you couldn't work, it would be a problem, so I contracted the insurance for you. Isn't that reasonable? Hearing that, it seemed like his explanation might not be wrong.
You're in a situation where you have to borrow money from me and can't pay the living expenses, yet you can afford insurance premiums? If you can pay that much, why not repay me?
Don't say that. I got the insurance for your sake. Robert said this while holding my hand. His expression looked genuinely concerned, but I couldn't bring myself to trust him.
If that's the case, you won't mind if the insurance money doesn't come in, right? I need quite a lot of money for surgery and hospitalization. I'll use the insurance money we received, so please transfer the entire amount to my account.
What? All of it? Is that much really necessary?
It might be. If it's not enough, will you pay the rest, Robert?
What? Not enough. That can't be true. Robert's face stiffened as he muttered to himself. Seeing him like this, the nurses also cast suspicious glances. I beckoned Robert to come closer and whispered so only he could hear.
It's useless to lie anymore. There isn't much insurance money because I'm alive, and there's zero inheritance. You must be disappointed.
Robert frowned upon hearing this.
Zero inheritance? What do you mean? It means there's almost no savings. Did you think you would get all my money if I was gone? Why is there none? You're a public servant, you earn well, right?
Robert's voice grew louder, and a nurse frowned upon overhearing him.
I was lending money to you, Robert. How much do you think a teacher's salary is? I'm still in my 20s, I don't earn that much. Plus, there are living expenses to pay. I never had any financial leeway. You've got to be kidding. What was all this for, then?
Robert hung his head, clutching at his forehead. My anger surged at his true nature showing. You won't get away with this easily. You'll be arrested too if they find out you were an accomplice. No one will believe that. Did you see the news? I'm the devoted husband worried about his wife. No one will believe anything you say. They'll just think you've gone mad from hitting your head. While saying this, Robert laughed. You can say that now, but not for long. I replied calmly to Robert's provocation. Then, he looked at me with a cold gaze. Don't get cocky. You should have just gone to the other world. I despised him for saying such things so casually. I sighed, waiting for the moment of revenge. Just as I sighed, the door of the hospital room opened abruptly, and men in a suit entered. Who the hell are you? We're the police. Is what you just said true? What? What are you talking about? I'm just worried about my wife. Ignoring Robert, who was sweating and panicking, the police reached for my bedside and took out a mobile phone. The phone was in the middle of a call. We've heard everything. Even the part about she should have gone to the other world. What? Why are the police? He turned pale and started to tremble. I called them. I wanted their help to uncover the truth about the accident. Thanks to you, I could fully expose your true nature. What, you? Officer, this is a misunderstanding. I just have a quick temper, and I thought Jennifer was picking a fight, so I snapped. It's not really about the money. No one will believe those words now. Then show me evidence that I'm the perpetrator of the accident. Robert kicked the bed in frustration. I glared at him and turned to the police. The woman currently arrested, Amelia, is his mistress. They've been close for quite a while. What? Don't say such nonsense without evidence. There is evidence. I had hired a private detective agency to investigate you. We have photos of you with Amelia and records of your activities over the past few months. Lying won't help you now. Ever since Robert frequently started asking me for money, I suspected he was in debt and hired a private detective agency investigate. The investigation revealed that he was having an affair, spending money on drinks and hotels daily. Knowing his mistress's face, I was certain he was involved in the accident when I saw her on the news. The police were making a phone call to search my house while listening to the conversation. Meanwhile, Robert was sweating and visibly shaken. So you ran out of money I gave you, and planned this accident to get the inheritance and insurance money, planning to live with her, isn't that right? That's just your wild imagination. Then I'll take the insurance money. Withdraw it now and bring it to me. Robert fell silent. It seems like he doesn't want to give up the money at all. Even though Robert refuses to hand over the insurance money despite the situation, the surrounding skepticism grows. I've heard from the police. They're concerned about how much you've been worrying about that woman. Well, she's my friend, it's natural to be concerned. The police told me they're concerned about how much you worry about the other woman. You're not even mad at Amelia for what happened to me. And why were you at the hospital that day, at that time? It was a weekday morning when I went to the hospital. Robert should have been getting ready for work around noon, and it was the time when I finished my appointment. Yet, he was inexplicably near a hospital in a neighboring city. I just happened to have a day off. On your day off, you were at the hospital? There are no places around there that you would visit. You weren't being treated there, so there must have been some reason you were there. Robert was speechless, sweating profusely. The police then restrained him. We'll ask for the details at the station. Please come with us. Wait. I'm not guilty. It's all a misunderstanding by Jennifer. His desperate excuses were ignored by the police, who remained unfazed with a stern expression. Officer, if he had planned the accident, what kind of punishment could he face? Well, if it's premeditated, it could be attempted murder. We need to hear the full story first, though. Attempted murder? Help me! Jennifer, I'm not guilty! Forgive me! Robert, pale as a ghost, shook off the police's grip and clung to my bed.
I admit I was wrong for cheating and borrowing money. I'm sorry. But this time, I was just in the car. I'm not guilty.
Before I lost consciousness, I heard your voice, Robert, saying now we'll get the inheritance as planned. How can I forgive someone who did this for money? When I spoke up, he started making unbelievable statements.
What? Are you sure about that? If I get arrested, it will reflect badly on you too. You'll have trouble at work. It's in your best interest to be careful.
Why should I forgive you? Do you even realize what you've done? I plan to divorce you, and whether you get arrested or not is none of my concern. I sighed in exasperation at his shocked expression.
Wait. Talking about divorce at a time like this? What do you mean? How can I live without Jennifer?
I made a further attack on Robert, who held his head in despair. That's not my problem. Just so you know, I was planning to divorce even without this incident. I have proof of your infidelity, and I'll get a hefty compensation in the divorce trial.
Compensation in a divorce trial? How can I possibly pay that? If I get arrested, I'll lose my job too.
That's your own fault for committing a crime. You should have thought twice before doing such things. Robert then knelt down, defeated.
I was tricked. Amelia said to me, if you wanted money, you should have just taken out insurance and staged an accident. Initially, I was supposed to drive, but since my license was suspended, she decided to drive. It's all her fault.
Robert shouted. Hearing Robert try to lighten his sentence even in this situation, I couldn't contain my fury. Tricked or not, I don't care. I'll never forget you saying I should have gone to the other world. That was your true feeling.
That's a lie. I didn't mean it.
I can't believe such words. I never want to have anything to do with you again, Robert. I'll consult a lawyer about the divorce, so never contact me again.
No, that's a lie. Stop it. I'm not bad. Let go.
He started to thrash around, but he was warned that further resistance could lead to obstruction of justice charges, and he quietly left the hospital room with the police. The next day, I learned from the news that Robert had been arrested. The once kind and grieving husband was now vilified as a criminal who plotted murder for insurance money. Over a decade later, I heard that he was released from prison. He had been fired from his job and struggled to find new employment due to his criminal record. Apparently, he was now working at a grocery store. I saw on social media that he is often reprimanded at work for having a lot to learn. As his case was reported in national news, he's well known to many. Apparently, people recognize him and take his photos without permission, making him uncomfortable. The photos show him looking significantly aged and unkempt, likely due to financial struggles. It's sad to see such a drastic change in someone who was once celebrated for his looks during his college days. Despite feeling this way, I cannot forgive him. I hope he spends his life reflecting on his actions. After everything that happened, I resigned from the school where I was working and moved out of state. There, I found a job as a piano teacher. Miraculously, my hands were not permanently damaged from the accident, and I was able to play the piano again. Now, I am remarried to a different man, and we are blessed with 2 daughters, living happily as a family of 4. When I married Robert, I chose him based on his looks. However, this experience taught me a painful lesson about not judging people by their appearance. My current husband may not be conventionally handsome, but he's kind, honest, and a wonderful person. I've made a vow to myself to never be swayed by appearances and to discern people's true nature.
It's cold. Mom, help me.
Margaret, my daughter who should be at my ex-husband Walter's house, suddenly called my mobile phone asking for help. In the dead of winter, with heavy snow falling, Margaret had been locked in the storage shed by her stepmother Ashley for over 4 hours. In a panic, I rushed over and managed to break open the shed door, only to find Margaret shivering and barely conscious inside.
Margaret, hang in there.
No matter how many times I called her, Margaret didn't respond, her face pale and bloodless. I hurriedly got her into the waiting ambulance and headed to the hospital, praying all the way. I'll never forgive Walter and Ashley for doing such a terrible thing to Margaret. Clenching my fists tightly, I resolved to seek revenge. I am Natasha, 29 years old. My husband Walter was my high school classmate, and is now an office worker. We got married 8 years ago, and then I became a housewife. We were blessed with a child, and lived happily as a family of 3 with our 7-year-old daughter Margaret. But things changed when Margaret started kindergarten. Walter began to look down on me, and unable to bear it, I divorced him 6 months ago. Of course I wanted to take custody of Margaret, but Walter strongly opposed.
How can a housewife like you raise Margaret?
I couldn't argue, but I couldn't let Walter take custody of Margaret just like that. The court ruled in his favor due to my lack of income and having no living parents to rely on, and Walter took custody of Margaret.
Margaret, I'm sorry, Mom can't live with you anymore.
My words broke off in tears, and Margaret, clinging to me, cried out loud.
I don't want to be away from Mom. I'm sorry. I promise, I'll come to get you as soon as I can.
I hugged Margaret gently, making a pinky promise. Wiping her tears.
Okay, I'll wait.
Margaret forced a smile and said. Since living apart from Margaret, I met her about once a month, enjoying shopping and chatting together, cherishing our mother-daughter time. Margaret became more clingy, always sticking close to me. Our happy times flew by, and every goodbye left Margaret with tears in her eyes, making me feel lonely too. Eager to live with Margaret again, I threw myself into job hunting and finally found a job, making ends meet. But still financially unable to take Margaret back, I worked hard, saving every penny I could. Then, 2 months after the divorce, I received a postcard from Walter announcing his remarriage, complete with a photo. His new wife, Ashley, was visibly pregnant. She looked like she was almost due for delivery. Was he cheating on me while we were married? Suspecting Walter, I called him. Congratulations on your marriage, Walter. How do you know that? A postcard arrived, with your photo. Didn't you send it? No, I didn't. Walter gave a vague answer, so I'm sure that postcard was sent by Ashley just to harass us. You seem so happy, good for you. Thank you. He seemed embarrassed. When I asked to speak to Margaret over the phone,
Mom, Ashley's going to have a baby soon.
Margaret told me excitedly.
Margaret! Don't say unnecessary things.
I heard Walter's panicked voice, and then he abruptly hung up the phone. So it's true. He was cheating even before the divorce. He's always been bad at lying or deceiving, so his panic probably confirms it. Yet, I feel ashamed for not realizing it sooner. From that day, Walter hardly let me see Margaret. When I said I wanted to talk to Margaret, he was blatantly annoyed.
Ashley's getting annoyed, so stop calling, okay? I just want to see Margaret. Please, let me see her. Are you trying to ruin my family? Stop it already.
Walter said that and hung up, not answering my calls after. I'm Margaret's mom. It's frustrating not to even be able to see her. I felt down from the helplessness but couldn't give up. I immediately went to a mobile phone shop and bought a pink kid's mobile phone that Margaret would like. Then, I waited near her elementary school and looked for Margaret as she was coming home.
Margaret! Welcome home. Mom!
When Margaret saw me, her face lit up with joy, and she ran to hug me.
I'm sorry we couldn't meet for so long. Yeah. I was lonely, but I was patient. Dad said if I'm good, I can see Mom. Yay!
I handed the kid's mobile phone to the excited Margaret.
Call me anytime. But it's a secret from Dad and your new mom, so don't get caught, okay? Wow. Thanks, Mom. Got it, it's a secret.
Seeing Margaret's happy face made me smile too. From that day, we messaged each other daily, talking about school and friends.
Margaret, are you having any trouble?
When I asked, worried.
Don't worry, Mom. I'm okay,
she always replied. Each time I saw those words, I felt relieved.
I'm always on your side, Margaret. I love you,
I told her every day. Even though we were apart and couldn't meet, I felt happy to be connected with her through messages. 2 weeks later. In the evening after work, it was snowing. Shivering in the cold, I was heading home when Margaret suddenly called me.
Mom, it's cold, help me.
Margaret's desperate voice came through, asking for my help, and my heart raced.
Where are you now? In the house's storage shed.
According to Margaret, Ashley had locked her in there for over 4 hours. I was almost panicking but tried to stay calm not to scare Margaret.
I'll come to help you right away, just wait a little bit. Okay, I understand.
Right after hanging up, I tried calling Walter's mobile phone several times, but he didn't answer. I was so worried about Margaret that I hurried to Walter's house. Upon arriving, the house was dark, no car, and it seemed no one was inside. What is going on here? I tried to open the storage shed where Margaret was said to be locked in, but it was locked. I broke the door with a shovel nearby and found Margaret inside, curled up and shivering from the cold.
Margaret! It's Mom!
Margaret, barely conscious, had a weak response to her name, and she felt very hot to the touch. I immediately called an ambulance and accompanied Margaret to the hospital. Why did this happen? During the transport, I kept repeating these words in my head, looking at Margaret's ashen face. I had been too reassured by Margaret's messages saying, "Don't worry, I'm okay." Why didn't I realize something was wrong sooner? I continued to blame myself for my naivety. At the hospital, the doctor told me, she's in a very critical condition. Holding Margaret's cold hand as she lay in the bed, unconscious, I felt a burning anger. I will never forgive Walter and Ashley for what they did to Margaret. I'll make sure they pay. I had decided on my revenge. That night, Walter called me. Apparently, he had heard from the neighbors about the ambulance at his house and my presence.
Don't take Margaret away like that. Give her back. Don't interfere with our parenting.
I could hear Ashley's yelling voice too, perhaps on speaker mode.
The custody is mine. I won't let you get away with this. That's right. We'll report this to the police.
Amidst their uproar, I took a deep breath and calmly said, "Margaret has passed away." "What?" Walter gasped. After a moment of silence, he asked with a trembling voice,
"You're lying, right?"
"It's all your fault." Then, in contrast to Walter, I heard Ashley laughing loudly.
Ah ha ha ha. Good riddance. She always compared me to you and never called me Mom. I never liked her anyway.
I was shocked. Could it be that for such reasons, this woman was harsh on a 7-year-old Margaret, even locking her in a storage shed?
Besides, Margaret never looked like me. I even wondered if she was really my child.
Encouraged by Ashley's words, Walter joined in. I was barely able to contain my rising fury.
Was Margaret really my child? Maybe she was another man's child?
Their mocking laughter came from the other side of the phone. It was too much to bear. I didn't want to talk to these scum any longer. With trembling hands, I said, "I'll handle the funeral arrangements. I'll contact you when the date is set." After hanging up, I sighed deeply. How could they say such horrible things in this situation? I couldn't stop my tears from falling, feeling both sad and frustrated. The next day, I received an unexpected call from Mrs. Simmons, who lives next door to Walter's house. We were close before, and she told me a shocking fact. I immediately called the place she mentioned, confirmed the fact she told me, and gathered some more evidence. Now I can bring them down. Wait for me, Margaret. Then I told Walter, I want to discuss Margaret's funeral arrangements, and arranged to visit his house the following Sunday. On Sunday, I visited Walter's house with a man, and Walter and Ashley reluctantly welcomed us. "You were supposed to handle everything, weren't you?" But there are funeral expenses and other things, right? I don't have that much money. Huh? What a hassle. Walter scratched his head and, turning to the man sitting with us, arrogantly crossed his arms and demanded, "Hey, make the funeral for Margaret cheaper. Just give us the cheapest plan with a discount." They both seemed to mistake the companion for a funeral director, as I had told them we were meeting for funeral arrangements.
Hey Walter. Do we even need to have a funeral? It's like throwing money away, right?
We have to, for appearances. Well, Margaret's life insurance will pay out a lot, and the rest depends on my negotiation skills. Walter, with a triumphant smirk, was adoringly gazed at by Ashley. Life insurance, huh? Wonder if that will go smoothly. As I muttered. Walter glared at me and said, "Huh?" So, I presented a voice recorder in front of him. Please listen to this first. What played was a recording of Ashley yelling and Margaret crying out. The sound alone was heart-wrenching. Walter and Ashley looked at each other in confusion.
This isn't Margaret's voice. Yeah, right. Must be someone else.
They desperately tried to deny it was Margaret, but I looked at them squarely.
No. This voice is definitely Margaret's. Don't you recognize the voice of someone you live with every day?
Still, Walter and Ashley insisted it was a mistake. So, I took out my mobile phone and showed them a video. Still going to make excuses after this? It was a video of Ashley forcibly trying to lock a resisting Margaret in the storage shed. Both the woman and Margaret's faces were clearly visible in the footage. There was no way they could deny it now.
Why do you have such a video?
The dash camera at Mrs. Simmons' parking lot next door caught it. Some cameras still record even if the car isn't moving. The audio was recorded by Mrs. Simmons too, who was worried about Margaret. Mrs. Simmons had always been fond of Margaret since she was little. She told me over the phone how she had been concerned about Margaret's well-being since I left the house. Gradually, she noticed Margaret losing her energy and thought something was off when she started hearing yelling from the house. Mrs. Simmons was worried and reported to Child Services. Ashley, you turned away the social workers who came several times without letting them see Margaret, right?
Shut up. It was just too much trouble. Yeah, having them come over is just annoying. It's Margaret's fault for not listening, it was just discipline. We were just trying to correct her behavior. What's wrong with that? Yelling and forcibly locking her in a storage shed is discipline? Don't be ridiculous. Margaret isn't your toy.
Walter and Ashley, still defiant, even had faint smirks on their faces. I decided it was time to introduce the man who had been with me. Just so you know, this man isn't a funeral director. He's the director of Child Services. The man, who had been quietly observing until now. Sorry for the late introduction, he said, extending his business card to Walter. Walter and Ashley's faces turned pale instantly. The director's expression became stern. What you've done is a serious crime. And he said in a cold voice,
You're exaggerating. As a director, you should understand that scolding a misbehaving child is a parent's duty. Exactly. Just titles and no sense in what you're saying.
Walter and Ashley were still defiant.
Enough already. Everything you've done has been testified by Margaret.
At my words, Walter momentarily opened his mouth in shock. Then, he suddenly burst out laughing.
Ahahaha. How can someone who's dead do that? Ridiculous. Yeah, what's she talking about? Ahahaha.
As they pointed at me and laughed, I smiled and informed them. Oh, Margaret is very much alive.
What?
That was a lie to prevent you from taking her back. Hearing this, Walter and Ashley were shocked, their mouths opening and closing like fish.
So, Margaret was a nuisance to you, right? You clearly said that. Then why didn't you give me custody when we divorced?
That's because I didn't want to pay you child support.
What? That's outrageous. You're the worst, not just as a husband, but as a father too.
I was furious to realize the true shallowness of this man who had fought me in court to take away my dear Margaret.
I'll take Margaret's custody back through court if I have to, and I'll make sure you both pay.
Natasha, don't say scary things. You can have Margaret, okay? Isn't that enough?
Not at all. Isn't reflecting and atoning for what you've done also a father's responsibility?
Walter still didn't seem to be taking things seriously, so I decided to press further.
And one more thing. Ashley was pregnant before we got divorced, right? What are you talking about?
Walter's gaze wavered, and Ashley looked down, visibly shaken.
No matter how much you try to cover it up, a simple investigation will reveal the truth. Be prepared to pay compensation. That's nonsense now. Can't we just let bygones be bygones? I apologize, so please, let it go. I will never forgive you. That's why I've filed a police report.
Upon hearing about the police, Walter's attitude changed abruptly, and he stood up to apologize deeply.
I don't want to get arrested. Margaret's alive, right? Natasha, please overlook this. I beg you.
Beside him, the previously defiant Ashley also bowed deeply to me.
I'm about to give birth. Please, Natasha. Withdraw the report right now.
I despised these two for their selfishness to the core. The director also said sternly, "Why don't you just give up?" But suddenly, Walter and Ashley tried to flee, rushing to the door. However, they were promptly arrested by the waiting police officers.
It's not my fault. Ashley did everything. What? You're the one who told me to lock her in the shed.
The two of them were shouting and resisting in vain. Their commotion attracted the neighbors, who gathered around. In front of the crowd, Walter and Ashley were taken away in the police car. Some time later, Walter and Ashley were sentenced to serve time in a trial. I filed for a change of guardianship and finally got Margaret back.
I'm happy that I can be with you,
Margaret says with the brightest smile. Determined to ensure a fulfilling life for my daughter, I resolved, I will make Margaret happy, no matter what.
It's unthinkable to ask for food money. Taking money from your family is shameful, you should realize that.
As my son's wife shouted, glaring at my husband and me, I thought to myself that what's truly unthinkable is her behavior. Unthinkable indeed, you fool. People say your daughter-in-law is a stranger, and it couldn't be more true. Such a brazen woman, she's not part of my family. The one who silenced my daughter-in-law was a single remark from our beloved grandchild. I am Lily, a 65-year-old housewife. I've been married to my husband Thomas for 40 years. We have 2 sons, both of them have their own families now. My eldest son, Michael, lives nearby. He has an 8-year-old daughter, but we rarely see her due to her busy school schedule. However, the last person you want to see is often the one who shows up uninvited. Lily, do you have anything you don't need? I'll take it off your hands. The loud one at the front door is Michael's wife, Emma. I've disliked her ever since my son married her. Looking back, she was always a bit off. She boldly asked about my husband's salary and our savings. Emma, you shouldn't ask such things, even to family. It can upset people. I once said to her, in a lecturing tone. Eh? Why not? We're family. My parents tell me everything. Oh, by the way, they said they hardly have any savings. Seeing her laugh, I felt drained. Later, my younger son's wife said, Lily, I need to talk to you about my sister-in-law. The content was unbelievable. At that time, she was struggling to conceive and was undergoing treatment. Why don't you have kids? You should have them while you're young, it gets harder as you get older. Such meddling made her neurotic. Even when Michael scolded his wife, she showed no remorse.
I was just giving advice as a mother,
she defiantly claimed. But after successful treatment, a grandson was born to my younger son. Then, this time, Emma sent a message. Just because you had a boy doesn't mean he's the heir, right? My daughter is the first grandchild and the eldest son Michael's child. To the second son's wife soon after giving birth. This incident caused my younger son's family to move away, reducing our meetings to a few times a year. Children grow up watching their parents, and looking at Emma's parents, it might not be entirely false. My husband sighed deeply. Emma's parents, living in the countryside, were equally strange. Every year at Thanksgiving, we send gifts to those who've been kind to us, including Emma's parents. One year, I received a phone call from Emma's parents.
Hello?
I was taken aback. So, the assortment of sweets and towels is fine, but we were thinking meat would be better, right? What is she talking about? It's the thought that counts, and besides, we've never received a Thanksgiving gift from Emma's parents. Yet, they had the audacity to say such things. I was hesitant, but when I told Michael about the call, he immediately scolded his wife. I should have told you what they like. Sorry. Next year, please send them their favorite things. I was stunned by her audacious response.
Emma, that's not the point. We sent those gifts with love, but both my husband and I felt very offended. We never receive anything from your parents, so we'll refrain next year. We don't want to impose,
I said and abruptly hung up the phone. Emma's causing friction in our family. She's odd, we should keep our distance. But contrary to my wishes, when my granddaughter Aria started elementary school, Michael's family moved close to our house. This house will be well taken care of by our family. Lily, you and your husband can comfortably move into a home for the elderly. When she said this with a smile, both my husband and I were speechless. In essence, she meant they wouldn't care for us but would take the house. We didn't expect care from them, especially not from Emma. But living nearby meant we'd frequent use the same supermarket. When I go shopping, there's an 80% chance I run into Emma. Oh? Lily, are you shopping too? What a coincidence, so am I. Emma says this, but I'm not a fool either. She must have seen me leaving our apartment for the supermarket. And her goal was clear, just one thing. These, I saw on TV. They were delicious. This is also recommended. And this too. She would unceremoniously add items to my shopping cart. I live with just my husband, we can't eat all of these. Even I put things back, she'd quickly return them to my cart, saying, "It's fine, I'll take them, don't worry about it." Fine for what? I thought, but with neighbors and friends working at the supermarket, I couldn't raise my voice. After I paid, she brazenly opened the packages as if they were her share and stuffed them into plastic bags, then into her own shopping bags. Even with a 10-pack of eggs, she'd say, "You can't eat all these, right? I'll take some." And open the pack herself. That finally made me angry. I use eggs every day, it's okay. Please give them back. And this meat too, I'll freeze any leftovers. When I said this, Michael and Aria both love eggs. I want them to eat a lot. And meat too. But, Michael's salary has been cut recently. She showed a visibly downcast appearance. Looking at her shopping bag, it was mostly discounted items. Because of her loud voice, other shoppers looked at us strangely. On a day I didn't encounter her at the supermarket, a neighbor working there stopped me to say, "Can't you do something about your son's wife? Asking for more discounts, not listening when we say we don't put sale stickers on items in the cart." Her embarrassing behavior made me feel like my face was on fire. Give me a break. My head's going to explode. Most of my conversations with my eldest son Michael became about his wife. That weekend, Michael and his unusually serious-faced wife Emma came over. As soon as she entered the room, "Lily, I got too comfortable thinking we're family. I'm sorry for the trouble at the supermarket. I'll refrain from such embarrassing behavior from now on." Is this really the same woman? She seemed genuinely remorseful. I later learned from my son that they had a serious fight. He threatened divorce if there wasn't an improvement, which seemingly changed her attitude. Life was peaceful for a while. But people don't change that easily. After that, I felt awkward using the supermarket, so I started ordering groceries online. Then, my son's wife began bringing my granddaughter Arya to visit regularly.
Grandma, I drew this.
She showed us a well-drawn picture. Oh my. Arya, your colored pencils are quite short, I remarked. I want to buy her new pencils, but things are tough. Sorry, Arya. Emma interjected. Seeing this, my husband took out his wallet. Here, buy Arya some new pencils with this. And gave her a small amount of money. She continued visiting, saying Arya's shoes were too small or she needed new clothes, always appealing to us. Sometimes she'd boldly enter our kitchen and ask, "Do you have anything you don't need?" Hey, is Michael's company really struggling that much? And if life is so hard, why doesn't Emma work? She's been a housewife since marriage, at home during the day. My daughter-in-law, Emma, has been a housewife ever since she got married, and seemed to be at home during the day. If she could use that time for part-time, her life would be a little easier. My husband and I often discussed this. That's the point. Then, out of the blue, my eldest son's family came over.
We're thinking of moving in here.
A completely unexpected proposition. My husband and I exchanged glances. Sorry to spring this on you, Dad, Mom. Emma suddenly started insisting on living together. See, you got your way. Let's go home. My son tried to take her home, but she stubbornly refused, and it was getting nowhere. My husband, having had enough, said, "If you're that insistent, we won't ask for rent. But you'll have to split the food costs with us. We're living on a pension, after all." Then, she stopped in her tracks.
It's unthinkable to ask for food money. Taking money from your family is shameful, you should realize that.
She came back with an outrageous response. Aren't you the one who should be embarrassed? And then,
if that's how you feel, then we are done as of today. And of course, I'll never let you see Arya again.
I watched her fury in silence. Thinking back, ever since she came into our lives, I've never had a day of peace. I've tolerated her because she's my eldest son's choice, but now I've reached my limit. I'll only cut ties with her alone and secretly ask Michael to let us meet our granddaughter. When I was thinking this,
hey, what does disowning mean? Like, not seeing each other anymore? If that's the case, I want to disown Mom.
Everyone was shocked by my granddaughter Arya's words.
Eh? Arya, what are you saying?
Especially Emma, who looked astonished.
Because, Mom, do you know what my friends call you? The beggar. Sometimes they laugh at me, and I don't want to go to school. The one who's embarrassing is you.
Arya's face looked like she was about to cry. Apparently, Emma had been making begging attacks on the parents of Arya's friends too.
Besides, you buy things you like, but my clothes and shoes are old. You said you'd buy me new colored pencils, but you never do.
Hearing this, I asked,
Eh? What do you mean? We gave you money to buy Arya colored pencils, didn't we? I can't believe it, but did you use it for yourself?
My eldest son's wife made an uncomfortable face and replied,
No. I used it for living expenses. It's hard to get by on just Michael's salary.
My son immediately said,
What money? And you always say that, so I've been working hard. I've been promoted twice since we got married. How much do you need to be satisfied? Or is this about divorce? I told you, if you cause any more trouble for my family or others, there won't be a next time. Above all, you've hurt Arya. You're a failure as a mom.
With his cold words, Emma's eyes filled with tears.
But I can't help it. We were poor growing up. I couldn't have what I wanted. Now I'm an adult, I want to eat and buy what I like. What's wrong with that?
To her crying hysterically, I said,
Don't be ridiculous. Making your child suffer while satisfying your own desires is just an excuse. I have no blood relation to you, and I would have welcomed a good daughter-in-law, but honestly, I only care about Michael and Arya. A foolish woman like you, I disown you.
And with that, she was taken back home by Michael. She probably thought living in our house would save on living expenses. What a joke. We decided to take care of our granddaughter Arya for a while. Because Emma had said,
You're an ungrateful child for repaying kindness with ingratitude.
To her daughter. Thinking she is doing her child a favor just shows she is finished as a mom. Emma insisted on not divorcing, but my son ignored her and forcibly sent her back to her parents' home. Of course, we got many calls from her ridiculous parents, but we ignored them all. The divorce wasn't easy and went to mediation. But thankfully, my son got custody. That's because her arguments were terrible, all about wanting to stay a housewife and not wanting to divorce, with no thought for Arya. Also, my son hadn't told us, but he had been living a repressed life, documented in his diaries. It was also discovered that Emma had been secretly saving a lot of money in her own bank account, which worked in my son's favor regarding the distribution of property. Honestly, I didn't want to give that woman a cent. My son Michael and granddaughter Arya moved out of their apartment to live with us.
Arya, I'm so sorry for making you feel lonely with all my work. I'm really happy you want to live with me.
My son was crying with happiness. Arya looked a bit shy. I thought peaceful days were finally here, but then, a few months later, some unwelcome visitor started ringing our doorbell incessantly while my son was at work and my granddaughter at school.
What?
Looking at the monitor, I saw an unexpected figure.
What do you want? Everything's been settled, right?
Opening the door, there stood Emma, my former daughter-in-law, and her parents, faces filled with anger.
Settled? Don't be ridiculous. Why haven't you paid child support?
Emma's mom's words confused us.
Excuse me? We're raising Arya here. If Emma were to pay, maybe, but why should we?
My husband glared at the three of them, baffled. Then Emma's dad said,
Emma has no income after the divorce. For the time being, your son should be taking care of her. That's why he needs to pay child support for Emma.
Behind her parents, my ex-daughter-in-law looked at me triumphantly. We couldn't help but laugh at such ridiculous statements.
You might want to look up what child support means. How old is your daughter? All I see is a healthy adult woman over 30. Did you really pay travel expenses just to come here and say something so foolish?
Following me, my husband added,
What you're doing is extortion. Now that we're divorced, we're strangers. We won't hesitate to call the police next time. To be honest, I've never once considered you family.
He then pulled out his mobile phone. Seeing this, they panicked.
Police? That's ridiculous. We're leaving.
And they left hastily, almost fleeing. Watching them go, we mused.
Those parents seemed normal until the marriage, but you really can't understand people. Child support for a wife? Never heard of such a thing. That woman, crazy till the end.
We laughed for a while, remembering their foolish faces. Apparently, Emma's family was struggling financially. Unbeknownst to us, they had been recipients of TANF for years, receiving it under the pretense of the dad's mental illness. However, it was revealed as fraud following an anonymous tip. They were all healthy, they should have been working. It's infuriating to think such people were getting money meant for those truly in need. They were working and paying fines for a while, but people don't change easily. They were arrested for theft a few months later. They're strangers now, but I hope they continue to struggle. As for us, we've been living peacefully as if it was all a lie. Arya has brightened up and brings friends home more often. Furthermore, my younger son's family decided to move back here for his job transfer. I've been in touch with my daughter-in-law.
Lily, please teach me cooking again. My son is thrilled that he'll get to see everyone more. And he's so excited to play with his cousin Arya after we move.
Looking back, I saw the grandchildren playing happily together, a smile naturally forming on my face. Then, 3 years after the divorce, my son Michael remarried. Her name is Elizabeth, introduced by a friend. She was mistreated by her ex-husband and his family for not being able to have children. Elizabeth is kind and gentle, getting along well with my younger son's wife. Above all, I miss my grandchild Arya very much, and we prepare meals together.
Arya shyly called me mom for the first time the other day. I thought I would never be able to be mom, so I was so happy.
Elizabeth teared up as she told me. I gently patted her back. I'm truly happy that someone as kind-hearted as you became Michael's wife and Arya's mom. Thank you, Elizabeth. Soon, my son's family will move to a new home. Not too far from here. Michael and Arya had a hard time with his ex-wife, but with Elizabeth, they'll surely have peaceful days. My husband and I are planning to start a small garden when we're alone. It seems we'll be able to spend our old age in peace. Thinking about this, I savored our current happiness.
My name is Emily. I'm 30 and currently pregnant. When I was 23, I was diagnosed with a condition that might prevent me from ever having children. For my younger self, that diagnosis was a heavy burden to bear. I feared that any potential romantic partners would reject me if they knew I might not be able to have children, so I stayed away from relationships. But then last year, I reconnected with Logan at our high school reunion. Logan confessed that he'd had feelings for me since high school and asked to exchange contact information at the reunion. Logan expressed his affection for me with such persistence and strength that I found myself growing attracted to him too. I had been honest with Logan about my potential inability to have children, but Logan said he still wanted to marry me, and so we tied the knot last year. Then, like a miracle, I found out that I was pregnant with Logan's child. I was so thrilled that I showed Logan the ultrasound picture I received from the obstetrician that very day. Logan cried with joy at the news of my pregnancy, and seeing his tears made me cry too. I resolved to cherish and protect the life growing inside me. I decided to bring this child in the world and raise it with all my love. A few days later, I found myself heading back to my parents' house alone. Logan couldn't come because of work, but I wanted to tell my mom about the pregnancy as soon as possible. My mother had comforted me when I was diagnosed with potential infertility, assuring me that a life without children could also be wonderful. She was also the first to celebrate when Logan and I decided to get married. My father passed away when I was very young, and my mom single-handedly raised my brother and me. My father had a good salary and left a sizable inheritance, but my mom continued to work until her retirement. My mom now lives alone in a house, leading an elegant life. She goes to the hobby club every day, tends to her garden, and even makes trendy do-it-yourself shelves, truly savoring her life. I was sure Mom would be overjoyed at the news of my pregnancy. As I arrived at my parents' house with high hopes, Mom greeted me with a smile. "Welcome home, Emily! Ryan and his family are here today." I knew from the voices of my nieces that my brother's family was visiting. Though I'm not particularly fond of my sister-in-law, my eagerness to share my pregnancy news with Mom had me entering the house nonetheless. From my perspective, my brother's wife, Chloe, can be a bit nasty. Chloe, who married my brother Ryan 7 years ago, made a remark I still can't forget when I was feeling down about being diagnosed with potential infertility. "If you can't have children, maybe you should give up on getting married," she said seriously. When I announced my marriage to Logan, she made things even more uncomfortable by saying things like, How much did you get from your mother-in-law as a wedding gift? What's the point of getting married if you can't even have children? It was a bitter experience, but creating a rift with Chloe, who is my brother's wife, would do no good. I had always brushed off Chloe's comments with a wry smile and never told Mum about them. As I entered the house with Mum, my nieces were happily playing pretend, while Ryan and Chloe were sitting at the table drinking coffee. After greeting my brother and his wife, I took a seat at the table and Mum poured me a cup of coffee as well. I was hesitant about sharing my pregnancy news with Chloe, but I thought she might not say anything unpleasant if I announced it in front of Mum, so I gathered my courage and began to speak. I actually came here today because I have some news to share. I am pregnant. As I gently rubbed my stomach and announced the news, Mum exclaimed, "Really?" Chloe muttered a quiet, "You got to be kidding," and my brother shouted, "Congratulations!" I know you were worried about potentially being unable to get pregnant, Emily. I am so glad for you. Logan really is your destiny. Congratulations. Mom just have been incredibly happy as she began to shed tears of joy. Remembering how Mom had supported me when I was feeling down, I too started tearing up. But I noticed Chloe whispering something to Ryan, and that got my attention. Repeatedly thanking Mom as I gently rubbed her back. Mom finally seemed to calm down and told me with a warm smile, "You must take care of yourself." Just then, the doorbell rang, as if on cue. "Oh, I wonder if that's a package delivery. I'll be right back." As soon as Mom was out of the room, heading towards the entrance, Chloe leaned in and started speaking to me. "Is it true that you're pregnant? You said you might be not able to get pregnant. Was that a lie to gain sympathy from our mother-in-law?" Huh? Caught off guard by her unexpected accusation, I could only stare at her in surprise, while my brother feigned ignorance. Seeing no help coming, I firmly responded, "No, that's not true. It's true that the doctors told me I might not be able to get pregnant. Even the doctors were surprised that I could, and my husband was overjoyed," I explained. "You should consider terminating the pregnancy." "What?" "It's better to do it sooner. I heard it's less stressful on the body." The horrifying words coming from Chloe made me shudder. Instinctively, I hugged myself as if to protect my unborn child. How could anyone say such a thing to someone who's excited about their pregnancy? I couldn't believe we were the same species. Even my brother seemed shocked by her statement. "Hey, that's a bit harsh, isn't it?" he defended me. But Chloe glared at him and continued. "But if Emily has a baby, our mother-in-law will definitely spend her money on that child. It's obvious that she would love her own daughter's child more. I can't stand the thought of our children getting less money." "So, you are telling me to abort my child because of money?" "I didn't say abort. I suggested that it might be better. Who knows if a child carried by a mother who might not even be able to get pregnant can be born healthy? I'm just thinking about what's best for your baby too, Emily." I was certain her claim of considering my child's well-being was a complete lie. Chloe was pushing me to abort my child out of fear that she would receive less financial support from our mother-in-law. She was always dressed in designer clothes, and her two daughters were the same high-end fashion. Moreover, she and my brother lived in a large house and drove an expensive foreign car. I knew my brother worked at a sizable company and earned a good salary, but I couldn't imagine it would be enough for such luxuries. Though it was hard to believe, I deduced from our conversation that my brother and his wife were receiving a significant amount of money from our mother-in-law. "I have no intention of receiving financial support from Mom. Please stop suggesting that I should terminate." "The baby can hear you," Chloe snorted at my words. "There's no way the baby can hear," she retorted. with a mean expression on her face. To me, she looked like a devil. When my mom returned, my brother and his wife suddenly became restless. It quickly became clear that they were afraid I would tell my mother about their behavior. "Since it's almost lunchtime, should we order takeout?" "Ah, that sounds great. Let's have pizza. Pizza sounds nice." "I think I'll head home. I'm feeling a bit tired." I was frustrated with my brother and his wife for planning to splurge on lunch. But more than that, I was feeling suffocated sharing the same space with Chloe. As I stood up and explained my mom that I didn't want to impose, she looked concerned and asked, "Are you sure you're okay?" I just smiled and nodded before leaving. That night, when Logan came home, I told him about what had happened, my mood still low. Logan was furious with Chloe. "I'm going to call her and give her a piece of my mind right now," he fumed. But I stopped him. If we, who were relatives after all, started a fight with Chloe, it would cause unnecessary trouble for my mom. However, I couldn't stand seeing my mom being treated like a cash cow by Chloe. I decided to report today's events to her. A few days later, once I confirmed that my brother and his wife weren't visiting, I went to my mom's home and explained the situation. She smiled warmly. "I've known that Ryan and Chloe have been depending on my money," she said. "Just the other day, Chloe said she needed an outfit for a ballet recital. I thought it was for my granddaughter, but I was shocked when I ended up buying clothes for Chloe. But don't worry, I have no intention of forgiving a daughter-in-law who says such things to my sweet daughter, and a son who doesn't stop her." Our always gentle mom was quietly furious. A few days later, my mom summoned both us and my brother's family to her home. Dressed in brand-name clothes as usual, Chloe arrived with my brother. After giving us, casually dressed as always, a thorough once-over, Chloe dramatically tilted her head. "Even if it's just your family home, is that outfit okay? If you need clothes, I can give you some of our hand-me-downs." "We like our clothes. We're not into flashy clothes like you, Chloe." When Logan gave her a straight answer, Chloe huffled, "I see," and sat down grumpily. I knew Logan was angry when my mom called us, saying, "Emily doesn't need to talk to Chloe anymore." He probably wanted to protect me from Chloe. Just as I was feeling grateful for having married such a dependable husband, my mom entered the room with a man. He was the accountant who had helped my father when he was the president of his company. It was revealed that he was here to talk about my mom's plans for old age and inheritance. "I'm the eldest son, and in return for taking care of our mother in her old age, I'll receive all the inheritance. That's only fair. I'll take good care of our mother-in-law. If a demon like you were to take care of me, I'd die early. I'm preparing to move into a home for the elderly, so don't worry." With that, she handed out pamphlets for the nursing home to both us and my brother's family. We were surprised to learn that my mom was planning to move into a nursing home, but what shocked us even more were her words to Chloe. Chloe seemed stunned too. She froze for the moment, then murmured in a trembling voice, That's harsh. It hurts to hear you say that when I care so much for you, and I was hurt too, to hear Chloe tell my precious daughter to abort her baby. Why would you? But Chloe glared at me. I glared back. I reported everything to Mom. "You tattled on me?" Chloe's voice rose in anger, and Logan just shrugged his shoulders. "Well, maybe you shouldn't have said something that would cause trouble if it were reported," Logan countered. "It's only natural for Emily to tell our mother-in-law if you said something like that." Ignoring Chloe, who was gritting her teeth in frustration, my mom said, "Now, let's get back to the matter at hand." As for the distribution of my inheritance, I've decided that all my assets will go to Emily after my death.
What? Why, Mom? I'm your eldest son.
According to our tax consultant, all of the gifts you received from me during my lifetime should count. My older brother and Chloe, bewildered, could only stare blankly as the tax consultant took out several documents from a file. One by one, my mum laid them out on the table. The cost of your wedding, your honeymoon, down payment on your house and car. I lent you the money for all of this with the understanding that you would pay me back, but I haven't received a cent in return. The documents laid out on the table were all loan agreements. Each one detailed how much was borrowed from Mum and what for. At the end of each document were the clear signatures of my older brother and Chloe. I've decided not to request repayment for these loans. Instead, I will count them as gifts made during my lifetime. This way, by leaving the remainder of my estate to Emily, I'm making sure everything is equal.
You're joking.
Next to him, Chloe went after Mum.
But Mom, you're going to be spending money on Emily's child from now on, aren't you? Your own daughter's child has to be more precious to you. Isn't that also a gift made during your lifetime?
She wants me to use my money solely to enjoy the rest of my life. Therefore, from now on, I will only be giving gifts to my grandchild on special occasions. Chloe seemed far from satisfied, but as the tax consultant calmly explained the property distribution, she seemed to have run out of objections. My older brother, realizing he would not be receiving an inheritance, looked deeply disappointed. The mood in the room was tense and somber. However, I felt a strong sense of relief knowing that Mum wouldn't be treated like a cash machine any longer. After this discussion, my older brother and Chloe stopped visiting our mother's house. So they really did only see me as a volatile, but after my child was born, I started visiting home more often. Whenever she was able to play with her grandchild, she seemed truly happy. Even without the money, just seeing Mum shower my child with love was more than enough for me. I later heard from Mum that Chloe used to mock us for both having jobs. Chloe, who had been a stay-at-home wife, apparently used to make comments like, "Emily and her husband are just poor, so they have to work." But now, she works much longer hours than me to pay for the house and car loans and for her kids' extracurricular activities. Living a lifestyle beyond her means, counting on Mum's wallet, she now has no choice but to work as she can't bring herself to lower her standard of living. Ever since she started working, she's been increasingly irritable. Mum says that my brother has been calling more frequently to vent about Chloe. Struggling to balance housework, child rearing, and work, their home is always in a mess, and there seems to be no end to their problems. I've heard that my brother is even considering divorce. Right now, my husband and I are pouring our love into our child that came us like a miracle. Of course, we don't receive any support from Mum, so we are working on hard to save for our child's future education. Despite the busy days, just seeing our child smile makes us feel, let's do our best again tomorrow. I can only hope that my brother and Chloe will adopt to a lifestyle within their means and be able to sustain their marriage.